The candles in Storm's End guttered in the salt-laden draught, splaying their glow across damp stone and austere tapestries. Stannis Baratheon stood alone before the narrow window slit, the murmuring sea below a luminous charcoal wash in the moonlight. He counted each wave as though the seven had set him that grim task, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack enamel. Behind him boots rasped on the rushes. Only one man walked with that careful humility, Davos Seaworth. "Your Grace," Davos said, stopping 3 paces short. Rain silvered his shoulders, the smuggler's cloak steamed like a kettle. In one hand, he held a folded letter sealed with the direwolf. A rider arrived from the twins by way of Seaguard. Lady Catelyn Stark petitions an alliance, swiftly before her son's army crosses the neck. Stannis turned, lantern gleam sharpening the planes of his gaunt face. Lady Catelyn petitions. He tasted the words like burnt grain. And what of her son, this king in the north? Robb Stark confirms the offer, Davos said. Hay pledges swords and levy alike if we march together against the Lannisters, and he will name you rightful heir of Robert's crown. A gull screamed above the ramparts, a lonely thing in the hush. Stannis' fingers twitched at his sword belt, though Lightbringer hung yet unborn at his side. Robert's crown is mine by the plain letter of the law. I will not scratch for it like a mongrel scraping bones. He took the parchment, broke the stark wax, and read in silence while Davos waited, the sea booming beneath. When at last Stannis folded the letter, his eyes were colder than winter's surf. The boy speaks of justice. Yet justice is a wall built stone by stone. If one block falters, the whole castle falls. Davos cleared his throat. Your Grace, the Lannisters hold King's Landing with lions alone. The Reach bleeds on its own meadow fields. Robb Stark has taken Jaime prisoner at Riverrun. His victories embolden the Riverlords. Together, we might crush Tywin before he regathers strength. Stannis walked past him to the map table, driftwood smoothed and stained with oils, painted with the kingdoms in faded blues and ochres. He set 2 iron tokens upon it, a stag crowned and a direwolf rampant. His knuckles whitened on the stag. If the North swears fealty, they must bend the knee in truth. I will brook no half measures. But the iron direwolf remained beside the stag. That small concession loomed larger than any war trumpet. North of the neck, thunder growled across the sodden moors of Moat Cailin. Robb Stark rode beneath the flapping banners, gray direwolves stitched in haste and rain. Gray wind loped at his destrier's flank, muzzle flecked with mire. The stench of peat and old iron rose from the crumbling first men towers that barred the causeway road. From those ramparts, watchmen glimpsed a ragged convoy cresting the distant snake of stone bridges. Stormlanders in dark cloaks, their crimson hearts emblazoned with a flaming man. Catelyn Stark stood on the gatehouse parapet, hood blown back, copper hair whipping her cheeks raw. She felt the tremor of crossing paths, a wind that could unmake kingdoms or knit them anew. He has come, she whispered, half to the stones, half to her gods. May the mother soften him. May the father judge us true. Inside the tower hall, a fire spat pine sap and hissed like restless vipers. Robb waited in plain boiled leather, cloak of gray wool, pinned with a simple bronze wolf head. No crown encumbered his brow. Around him stood Greyjohn Umber howling for ale. Galbart Glover, face sheathed in frost. Maegg Mormont, a bear of a woman in mail. Catelyn wove through them, her quiet presence a steadier shield than steel. The doors boomed open. Stannis Baratheon entered, helm cradled under one sinewed arm, eyes as unforgiving as midnight on the narrow sea. Behind him marched Davos, Melisandre of Ashai in scarlet silk, and a knot of Stormlander captains. The hall swallowed its breath. Even the great Joan's laughter died. Robb stepped forward. Gray wind snarled, but quieted at a word. Lord Stannis. He did not offer the royal style, an omission calculated as precisely as any feint upon a battlefield. I thank you for answering our call. Stannis' gaze flicked from direwolf to boy king. Need answers, no thanks, Stark. You seek justice. So do I. But the Iron Throne is no joint stool for uneasy partners. No. Robb held that granite stare without flinching. I do not seek that throne. My father died a traitor's death for unmasking the bastard claim of Joffrey Baratheon. If you hold the law, you are Robert's heir. Let the realm see it. Give me the North's freedom and the Riverland's peace, and House Stark will bear your banner when the banners are counted. Silence lapped like breakers. Catelyn felt her heart hammer, each beat a prayer to the gods who watched from carved niches above the hearth. And then Stannis nodded. Once, the motion curt yet fateful. So be it. I name you Warden of the North, Lord Robb Stark. Kneel, swear, rise, and then we go to war. Robb sank to one knee upon the rushes, sword laid before him. Words, ancient, solemn, passed between the two men. Catelyn closed her eyes, tasted tears lost among the peat smoke. Ned, she thought, if only you could see the fruit of your honor now, your son forging a pact sharper than Valyrian steel. Melisandre's laugh was a breath of furnace heat. Blood calls to blood. The Lord of Light burns bright in this hall tonight. Her ruby choker pulsed, casting red motes over stone. Men shivered, though the fire roared hotter. The raven that carried word of the Union beat its black wings through rain, over the neck, past the trident-swollen forks, and south to Harrenhal, where Tywin Lannister broke fast on smoke-cured ham while strategies bred like locusts in his mind. When Maester Forley of House Frey recited the message, Lord Tywin's knife split the ham not in twain but to a sliver, neat as surgery. His green eyes narrowed to coins. Stannis and the young wolf together, he mused. Voice mild as velvet stretched across barbed wire. Cersei plays at queenship while the realm aligns against her. Sir Kevan stepped near, ever the mirror to Tywin's colder genius. We must pull them apart. Promise Robb the bones of Ned Stark, perhaps. No. Tywin pushed the plate away. Robb Stark wears grief as others wear armor. Offer him bones and he will turn them into swords. We need sharper tools. He tapped the Raven's letter, eyes alight with some awful calculus. I recall Lord Bolton's bastard hunts north of the neck, and Walder Frey's appetites for marriage pacts. Every chain has weak links. Dem Torster. Yet for the moment, chain and mail alike were hammered in fire and conviction. At Deepwood Moat, shipwrights felled green oaks for fleet timber, while Stannis inspected each keel with shipmaster Guncer's sunglass. In the Riverlands, Robb marshaled outriders to hound the Lannister scouts, pinning Tywin between fords too swift to cross. Southward, Ser Davos smuggled messages through the Blackwater's night, feeding discontent in Flea Bottom and stoking rumors that the true king marched with northern wolves at his flank. In the quiet between campaigns, Catelyn found herself at Storm's End, walking the mossy battlements where her girlhood fears once perched like crows. She and Stannis stood again by the wind-slit window, that precarious aperture onto the wide, stormy world. Your husband spoke often of you, Stannis said without preamble. The surf-hammered rock far below. He said you were wiser than most small counselors, and twice as brave. Catelyn's fingers traced the lichen-slick Merlon. Eddard spoke little of battle beyond necessity. Yet I suspect he admired your resolve. Ow. Stannis grunted, a sound less dismissive than pained. Resolve is cold comfort in lonely nights. For a heartbeat, the sternness slipped. She glimpsed the isolation beneath the iron. Then his voice steeled again. Your son has spirit. Keep him alive. The realm will need rulers of unbent sinew after the war. She inclined her head, but before she could reply, they heard the trumpets of approaching riders. Robb had returned from Talhart's muster, and with him strode a direwolf grown monstrous. Gray Wind's shoulders nearly Robb's height, eyes pale as a winter dawn. Stannis watched the beast pass and murmured, almost to himself, wolves and stags hunt well together when the prey is mighty. Catelyn realized then that he spoke not of Lannisters alone, but of every faction that might tear the realm anew. Tyrells, Greyjoys, even the shadow of dragon lore stirring across the narrow sea. By mid-year, the allied host unfurled across the rolling fields of the Crownlands, 80,000 strong. Stormlander spears, Northmen pikes, Manderly banners, starched white with leaping tridents, Baratheon knights in mailed columns under the crowned stag. Campfires scarred the plain like a sky of fallen stars. Messengers galloped between commanders. Brynden Tully mapping river crossings. Davos coordinating grain barges through Cracklaw Sound. Shireen Baratheon knitting stockings for frost-bitten northern boys. The army felt improbable, a dream conjured from ashes and duty. Under the red silk pavilion that served as joint command, Robb bent over a painted terrain board. "We strike at Duskendale first," he proposed, tracing a line with his dagger. "Cut their supply harbors, force the Lannisters to ride hungry through the King's Road." Stannis listened, arms folded. "And if Tywin abandons Harrenhal, he could fall upon our flank before we draw food from those same ports. We need Tywin fixed, immobilized." Melisandre stepped into the lamplight. Her red eyes seemed lit from within. "Fire binds as surely as iron. Let the Lord of Light entrap our enemies." She produced a wooden cage, within which writhed fat leeches, their bellies swollen dark with royal blood taken from Gendry waters. A youth Stannis had claimed from King's Landing for just such sorcery. She pressed one leech to the hot brazier, intoning, "Lord Tywin Lannister, I offer you to the flames." The leech shriveled, sparks crackling. Robb watched uneasy but said nothing. Stannis' face was granite. Strategy in Westeros wore many masks. If blood magic could weaken Tywin, fewer sons of the North might die on battlefields. Far from sorcery's glow, Tywin's strength did wane, though by mortal means. At Harrenhal, the spring flux swept through his camp. Men fell to cramps and watery blood, their moans echoing through halls blackened by Aegon's fire. Maester Pycelle worked day and night, with possets and leeches, but whispers spread that the old lion had angered gods older than the Seven. Tywin himself rose each dawn gaunt and hollow-eyed, yet unbowed. "Illness ends when discipline begins," he barked, and tripled the lashings for any man found drunk. Still, every dawn burned more wagons for lack of oxen. He gathered his captains in Harrenhal's shattered yet vast great hall. "We yield the Riverlands," he announced, voice iron over cough. "We march east to King's Landing. There Cersei's intrigues damned us. There we will hold shield over Joffrey's brutal kingship until I carve these rebels into obedience." Sir Gregor Clegane shifted, visor hanging like a butcher's curtain. "We ride now," he rumbled. "AT, first light." Tywin's gaze swept the ranks. "We burn Harrenhal behind us. No refuge for the wolves." Nah. Thus began the lion's flight toward the capital, a column of steel and discipline limping along the King's Road, torching any barns that might succor the enemy. Yet, the wolves and stags smelled blood. At Maidenpool's chalk cliffs, Davos Seaworth guided Stormlander ships into the bay by moonlight. The fishing village awoke to masts bristling like pine, sails striped gold on black and dire wolf gray. Robb's outriders thundered in from the north, closing the pincer, and from the southern hills marched the main host under Stannis, bannermen of Estermont and Morrigan, copper antlers glinting dawnfire. Ser Adam Marbrand held the Lannister rearguard with courage forged in tournaments, but courage is fragile when outnumbered thrice and cut off from water. Before noon, the first Lannister standards fell. Davos men captured 1,000 bushels of barley and salt pork. Northmen herded red-cloaked prisoners to makeshift corrals. Robb located Marbrand among them, sweat slick in gilt plate, yet standing with leonine pride. The young wolf saluted with his sword. "Sir, you fought well. May we treat you as an honorable captive." Marbrand nodded, though defeat tasted ash. "Better a wolf's chain than a lion's ghost," he murmured. Stannis reserved less mercy for traitors to lawful kingship. He ordered the small folk spared, granaries sealed for his own men, and a dozen Lannister captains hung from Maidenpool's gate. Each noose he watched without blinking. War, to Stannis, was carpentry. Remove rotten wood, reinforce beams, raise the structure. That night the two kings, one crowned, one by northern acclaim, shared meat rare over a brazier. Oil hissed on the iron mesh as grease dripped. Outside the pavilion, campfires murmured like a city of whispers. "You showed restraint today," Robb said, sipping watered wine. "My bannermen expected you to burn the captives for your red god." Stannis shrugged, almost a tilt of shoulders. Burning men serves only when their deaths foster victory. I am not some butcher to set a foreign priestess. His jaw flexed. Your father once spared me at Storm's End when Mace Tyrell starved us. I repay debts. Robb set down his cup, embers painting his cheeks bronze. Your debts will be deep if we take King's Landing. My sister sits captive there, my foster brother I believe dead. Joffrey is cruel beyond reckoning. Sansa's letters bleed panic between each forced line. I want her safe as Ned would have wanted. Stannis nodded once. Then we break the city walls before Cersei breaks the girl. His voice was not kind, but it was promise. Downriver, Jaime Lannister paced his cell at River Run, counting bricks. 10 paces from door to barred arrow slit, each footfall a ringing note in the cage of his circumstance. Chains braided his wrists like base coin jewelry. He had been Kingslayer, Knight of the Kingsguard, Darling of Tourneys. Now he was captured coin for Robb Stark's ransom game. At dusk, a jailer delivered news. Stannis and Rob together had seized Maidenpool, battle-light the night sky. Jaime laughed, startling the guard. They'll quarrel soon enough, he said, voice a golden drawl over rust and rot. Stannis' honor is flint. Robb's pride is greenwood. Strike them together and sparks fly, aye. But soon the whole pile smolders. My father will use that heat. Yet even as he spoke, a shard of doubt lodged beneath his swagger. Tywin dwindled at Harrenhal. Cersei spun webs in King's Landing. Half a realm away, Jaime's sword hand itched for steel he could not reach. Within the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister paced harder still. Her crown glimmered, pinched by restless fingers. At twilight, bells tolled over the city, first for curfew, then for mood. Houses shuttered. Rats ruled the alleys. Sansa Stark, pale as milk, stood on a balcony overlooking the muddy river, hands clasped as though prayer might sear chains. Beside her, Sir Boros Blount loomed with bulbous eyes. In the council chamber, Grand Maester Pycelle wheezed that Tywin marched to the capital. Ravens from Harrenhal arrived hourly. Lord Baelish offered coin for Stormcrow Sellswords. Varys, silk smooth, reported riots in Flea Bottom. Peasant quiet turned restless by rumors of the true king's advance. Cersei's voice sliced the din. We will hold the city. She rapped knuckles on the cedar table. Send for Wildfire from the Alchemist's Guild. Triple the gate's garrisons. And fetch me every singer who still has a tongue. I want verses of Joffrey's valor in every tavern by sunrise. Nan. The people starve, Lord Baelish purred. Songs fill bellies poorly. Fear fills them better, Cersei snapped. Let them fear wolves and stags at the gate, so they cling tighter to their lion queen. But in the guttering torchlight, even her own words sounded brittle. Somewhere beyond those thick walls, her father's measured tread slowed with illness. Allies scattered. She damped rising panic with a swallow of arbor gold. Still, the chalice trembled. Summer's end brought torrential storms that churned the King's Road to slurry, yet the Allied army pressed on. Scouts returned with tales of Tywin's columns faltering at Hayford, rear guard harried by Wolf's Head riders under Galbart Glover. Stannis convened war council upon a wind-swept ridge. Maps fluttered, pegged by daggers. We strike at dawn, he declared. Robb's outriders close the road north of Zau's Horn while my heavy infantry pins Tywin front. If he breaks, he retreats toward the Blackwater, straight into Davos ships choking the mouth of the river. Robb's gray eyes gleamed. And if he holds, then we grind him, Stannis said. No haste, no bravado, only iron certainty. In that moment, Catelyn noted the spectrum of warriors. Robb's fire, Stannis' stone. Fire needs stone to contain it. Stone needs fire to temper its chill. Perhaps together they might yet forge peace. Night fell. Fires studded the ridgeline. Beneath a moon veiled by storm cloud, men sharpened spears, fletched arrows, whispered farewells to distant loves. Robb sat with gray wind curled like a living cloak about his shoulders. He recalled nights in Winterfell's Godswood, when the world felt small and safe, and Father's voice was the North's heartbeat. He pressed a hand to the direwolf's ruff. Tomorrow we ride south again, brother." The beast's ears twitched, and Robb could almost sense the looming thunder of war reflected in those pale eyes. In his tent, Stannis knelt before a brazier where coals glowed like dragon hearts. Melisandre hovered, her shadow red and tall on canvas. She dripped 3 more leeches, Renly, Balon, Joffrey, into the flames, whispering names that sizzled to sparks. Stannis' lips moved in silent prayer, not for salvation but for victory. His face lit hellishly, irony unspoken. The king who followed God's old Starks, barely named, yet now bent before a red stranger's promise. But Stannis Baratheon would embrace any cross, wield any blade, if it chiseled the realm back to lawful order. Dawn rose blood-red over Sau's horn. Mist draped the wheat like funereal gauze. Horns brayed from both camps. Baritone blasts for the stag, high wolf howls for the north, brazen lion roars. Tywin's host, though diminished, arrayed itself in solid ranks of crimson and steel, banners snapping. Roaring lion, burning sun lion of Crakehall, golden fists of Casterly Rock. Trumpets bawled Tywin's cold resolve. The first clash came when Northmen silent as moss parted the dew fog and crashed into Lannister scouts. Arrows rose in shrieking clouds, blotting the pale sun. Greyjohn Umber led the van, voice booming a war song older than Andal's. At his flank thundered House Karstark's black banner. The land trembled with hoofbeats. Stannis commanded the center, Stormlander infantry with flails and serried shields, Florent archers loosing flights that hissed overhead. Beneath antlered helms, the men of Cape Wrath advanced in disciplined lockstep, their drums a steady pulse. Above them rippled the crowned stag on black. Tywin rode the ridge on a white courser, face stony. He saw the pincers closing, Robb's cavalry sweeping his flank, Stannis hammering front. Yet he neither fled nor faltered. "Hold," he commanded. "Let them dash against us like waves on rock. When the wave retreats, we countercharge." Now, for an hour steel rang on steel, the cries of dying men a choir of agony. Mud turned to clinging crimson paste. Banners toppled and were raised anew. Davos ships, unseen by those locked in melee, slipped up the river shallows behind Tywin's position, disgorging fresh Stormlanders to seize the supply wagons. Smoke rose from burning fodder. Amid the chaos, grey wind leapt among Lannister knights like a demon, loosed from old Nan's tales, hamstringing horses, felling men. Robb, sword a streak of silver, followed the direwolf's carnage deeper into enemy lines, heedless of arrow rain. Stannis saw the opening ripen. He signaled. Ranks shifted, shields locked, and the Baratheon center advanced with implacable force. Tywin's line buckled. Sir Kevan strove to shore the breach, but Umber's axe cleaved through his shield, staggering the veteran. Tywin ordered the trumpeter to sound retreat southward. Yet the road lay barred by Davos men, firing crossbow bolts from behind overturned wagons. Panic rippled, subtle at first. Then the Lannister center sagged and broke. Lions fled, wolves nipped, stags speared. The rock had cracked. From the ridge, Tywin watched doom unmake months of strategy. He might still fight through, yet no path remained but slaughter. He turned his courser, Kevan beside him, and spurred toward the river crossing. Banners frayed. Behind him, the proud gold lions fell to mud and blood. But the crossing had already been taken. Davos Seaworth, modest knight of onions, greeted Lord Tywin with lifted visor and leveled sword. "My lord," he called, "the river is closed." Tywin reined short. Sun glittered on the wet blade. Around him riders crowded, unsure. Across the fields he heard the northern horns sound triumph. For the first time in years, a flicker of defeat danced in the old lion's eyes. He sheathed his sword. "Very well." He pointed at Davos's gorget, the onion sigil. "Do you fancy lion's meat for your broth tonight, smuggler?" Davos smiled with sad courtesy. "Not tonight, my lord. I have better cargo. Peace for a realm." Tywin's reply was a weary snort. He dismounted, handed the reins to Kevan, and surrendered his sword hilt first. As midday bells rang from far-off septs, the war's fulcrum shifted under the watchful sky. Victory songs rose into evening, yet none within the allied camp reveled blindly. Catelyn walked through surgeons' tents where northern boys gasped on blood-slick stretchers. Stormlanders muttered prayers to Seven and Arlor alike. Victory had teeth, but they were wolf and stag teeth alike. Every bite drew shared blood. Robb visited the wounded until moonrise, his cloak soaked crimson at the hem. He found Stannis atop a knoll overlooking the dark river, arms folded. Between them words were unnecessary. They had netted the lion, but the lion yet had claws. Cersei, Joffrey, the gold cloaks in their skin of guilt. King's Landing still stood. Robb sat on a stump, exhaustion bowing his shoulders. "We march within the week," he said quietly, as if voicing a vow to the night. "Before Cersei recruits fresh sellswords. Before the city stores enough food to withstand siege." Stannis inclined his head. "Within the week." He turned toward the distant glow where King's Landing's torches blurred the horizon. "The Iron Throne waits. Law waits. Your sister waits." Robb's fingers tightened on the wolf-head pommel of his sword. "And what of the realm after we win? Wolves do not bend knee after the hunt." Stannis regarded him long. "We will forge terms on solid oaths, but first we end the usurpers, one hammer blow at a time." In the hush that followed, wind-stirred banners ravaged by battle. Catelyn, watching from below, thought of Ned's words. "When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives." Tonight, wolves and stags hunted together. She prayed the pack would last long enough to spare her children and the realm beyond. Above them the sky cleared. Stars burned cold, eternal, aloof to mortal triumph or torment. Yet somewhere in that silent choir, perhaps a lone star flared brighter, for hope newly kindled on blood-drenched earth. Ada. Smoke still coiled from distant cook fires and corpse pits, when dawn bled pale across the trampled fields of Sow's Horn. Robb Stark woke to the scratch of quills in the next compartment of the command tent. Catelyn already drafting letters to River Run and Winterfell, parchment rustling like restless leaves. Beyond the canvas, tents stirred, mules brayed, and somewhere a blacksmith hammered a bent breastplate back into shape. Victory felt fragile in the chill air, a glass blade glinting, lovely, liable to shatter at first mishandling. Robb pushed aside his blanket. His mail shirt lay folded, still sticky at the seams where dried blood clung. Gray wind lifted his great head, yawned, then stuffed his snout beneath Robb's palm, seeking the calm that always followed battle. Robb scratched behind the ears, staring at the tent roof while counting heartbeats. "Father, I won. Father, I lived." Words any son might whisper, but the men who should hear them slept beneath 6 feet of traitor-planted earth in King's Landing. The thought struck him anew each morning, a blow dulled by habit, but never painless. Outside, crows argued over the remains of a Lannister supply horse felled by arrow. Squabbling black feathers, scraping beaks, the brittle laughter of death's winged accountants. Robb rose, pulling on a plain surcoat patched at the shoulder. King in the north, yes, but fewer silks meant fewer arrows finding him on the field. He stepped through the slit, gray half-light stinging his eyes. The camp sprawled like an unruly city forming itself from mud. Stormlander pavilions striped gold and black, northern ridge tents pale as sealskin Riverlord banners flapping from crooked poles. In the center rose Stannis Command Ridge, stiff with order. Straight rows, strict pickets, every latrine trench measured. Robb directed his steps there, gray wind padding silent as snowfall. A guard blew a short note on a brass whistle, announcement of the Northern King's approach, and Robb found Stannis already armored, gazing south over the misted valley where Tywin's routed host had scattered. The captured lord himself was nowhere in sight. He and his chief captains had been confined in a ring of wagons under Davos watch. Stannis' iconic frown marked his brow like a brand. "Your Grace," Robb said by way of greeting. Stannis' eyes flicked toward him, then back to horizon. "Horse counts? 81 mounts serviceable for my host. Another 100 broken to draft but usable for message riders. Will requisition more from villages on the march. Though the Crownlands are scoured near bare, my quartermasters say 53 days grain remains if the weather stays fair. Stannis' voice carried no blame, only mathematics. We move in 2. 2, Robb echoed, throat tight. I had hoped for 3 to rest the wounded. Rest enough, and you lose the race. Stannis' mailed fingers drummed the pommel of his sword, as if the steel beneath cloth yearned for forward momentum. Cersei wastes no hour. Tyrell negotiators sniff at the south like vultures sampling breeze. Victory chooses the man who arrives first. Robb exhaled. He could already feel the rumble of boots in the soil, the taut hum in muscle and bone that heralded renewed marching. Then too, it is. Stannis turned to him fully. Casualty lists. 2,100 dead, or likely to die by fortnight's end. 1,200 more injured, but able to march in a sennight. The maesters speak favorably of a riverland salve for steel rot. We need more honey and clean linen. I'm no raw. For honey, send riders to the disputed hills. Beehives are plenty there if you know cracks in cliff. Stannis' gaze sharpened. Clean linen you'll find in King's Landing. After we take it. Robb ventured a thin smile. Ambitious quartermaster. Practical, Stannis corrected. Their shared hush lingered, 2 kings standing equal yet oddly alone. Robb sensed unspoken words moving in Stannis like submerged rocks altering the flow. The matter of oaths and crowns deferred but never dissolved. He almost broached it, shaped a sentence about northern freedom, fealty tempered by autonomy, yet the moment contracted when Davos clattered up the slope, cloak snapping. Forgive your graces, the Onion Knight said, breath frosting, but Lord Tywin requests audience. Says he'll speak only to you both together. Stannis' lip curled as though someone had offered him sour goat's milk. We are not minstrels to attend a lion in a cage. Robb folded arms. Yet a lion in a cage remains lion. Hear him. Decide if his snarl hides hidden fangs. Stannis gave a curt nod. Bring him. But no swords within arm's reach. Davos bowed and trotted away. Stannis watched him go with muted affection that rarely softened his expression, then returned to scanning the south. Beneath them the camp mimicked hive order. Smiths repairing helm clips, cooks stirring oat porridge, squires currying mounts. Robb wondered whether resolution might surge easier from such discipline, the way clear lines on parchment coax strategy from chaos. But the North's chaos was its soul, like river ice breaking each spring. When Davos returned, Tywin Lannister walked between 2 Stormlander guards, manacled but erect. His doublet, once crimson lustrous, lay dulled by grime. That lion mask, detached, clinical, calculating, remained unmarred. Time seemed a servant brushing his sleeves. Robb felt gray wind stiffen, hackles rising at scent of blood-laced pride. The wolf's low growl earned Tywin's passing glance. Mild interest, not fear. Lord Tywin, Robb began, polite as steel. You wished words. Tywin studied the 2 kings, measuring distance, daylight, perhaps the speed of blade if he lunged, reflex of a man who never believed chains final. I congratulate you, he said at last. You have won an engagement Robert Baratheon might have praised over wine. Stannis should relish such commendation from his own brother's shade. Stannis' eyes narrowed, but he did not bite. Tywin's voice drifted on, smooth as golden thread. Yet wars are not decided by one field. Capture me, and Cersei inherits command. You conflate a lion's head with its claws. Robb answered, claws break when the head falls, not when claws grow anew. Tywin's cuffed hands lifted a finger, delicate. Alliances shift. Freys guard my grandson as firmly as they guard crossings. Bolton bannermen hunger for new honors. You gamble order on men of mutable loyalties. He swiveled toward Stannis. Break bread with Bolton. He envies stark repute. Win Lord Walder with a queen's seat for one daughter and a marshal's baton for a bastard son. Divide your enemy, or your union will divide itself. No, Widen. Stannis' mouth crooked, half scorn, half consideration. Sound counsel from a beaten foe. His tone icicled. You advise we bribe your own allies. Take them before they hear my own bribe, Tywin replied, almost pleasantly. A good general wages war with coin and fear in equal measure. Chains clinked as he folded hands. Release me, and you may keep the coin. Keep me, and you shall learn fear. From quarters you misjudge distant. Robb felt a flick of temper, blood driving heat into ears. Threats win you no release. Tywin inclined his head, as though that had been demonstration rather than petition. Then we returned to waiting. I trust you will keep me alive. Dead, I am martyr to Joffrey's cause. Alive, a valuable hostage. Yet hostages devour resources. Men guard, men feed, men watch. One error and your direwolf chews my throat, and you lose bargaining chip, leaving only my daughter and my grandson's cruelty to meet you at gates. Stannis took a slow breath. You speak circles to mask emptiness. You remain prisoner until war is ended. That is final. No. Tywin's eyes shimmered, briefly lit with appreciative spark. Final pronouncements rarely survive first arrow. Good day, your graces. He turned before guards prodded, arrogance preceding him like fragrance. When he was gone, silence left afterfoot. Robb spoke first. He plants seeds of doubt. Let them rot, Stannis muttered. If we hold a course, they cannot sprout. Yet he stared harder south, perhaps seeing those seeds drifting on wind. Robb descended to rally his commanders. Grachan Umber arguing with Galbart Glover about wine rations. Mage Mormont rolling maps with calloused fists. Sir Edmure Tully recovered enough from arrow graze to bark orders. They clustered at a rough table hammered from shield plank. 2 days, Robb announced. Travel light. Take what carts must ferry wounded, but send heavy wagons with Davos on river to Maidenpool. Then to the Blackwater. Our spear point outruns Tyrell couriers. The Grey John guffawed. Beat the rose-perfumed lordlings? I'll piss on their petals. Edmure frowned. Their petals may align with the Lannisters if we starve the reach of coin. Best court them. Later, Robb decided. First break the gate. That afternoon Sansa Stark sauntered along the Queen's ballroom of the Red Keep, skirts rustling soft as wings, while behind her 2 Kingsguard, Meryn Trant and Osmond Kettleblack, traded crude jokes. She passed tall windows and glimpsed wisps of smoke far to northeast, faint as spider silk. A cook had whispered that Tywin's banners had been sighted retreating toward the city, only to vanish. But rumor's route eluded proof. In King's Landing each spark of gossip bred a wildfire of fear. Red lines stretched across Fishmonger's Square. Flea Bottom near starved children fought dogs for pigeon bones. Joffrey had taken to archery practice on the ramparts, loosing that straw men painted wolf gray or stag black. Each bolt drew his delighted crow. Sometimes he commanded crossbows turned upon the starving, who pressed too close to gates. Cersei encouraged no such spectacles. They stank of desperation. But her son, head swimming with ragged pride, rarely listened. That night, torchlight flared along city walls as reinforcement garrisons drilled. Cersei stood on a tower balcony wrapped in sable, watching bruised sky, fingers blistering the stem of a wine goblet. Pycelle had confirmed the Raven. Stannis and the Northern Boy King marched united. Tywin captured. News enough to topple sanity, yet she clung to outward poise. She told herself father would escape. She told herself wildfire lined catacombs like sleeping dragons. 1 spark and a legion dead. She told herself rose-knighted Mace Tyrell still courted Lannister coin. Yet, voice within whispered, all illusions crumble beneath a single battering ram. A soft footfall behind. Lord Varys bowed, robe shimmering. Your Grace asked for updates? She turned sharp. What of the chain? Master Helene's forges beat night and day. The underwater stretch is nearly complete. Your harbor will greet Stannis' famed fleet with iron handshake, should they approach by a river. And the people, restless, starving. But a hungry man screams louder than he strikes when crossbowmen line rooftops. Her breath smoked. These wolves and stags think themselves saviors. We will show them lion claws still draw blood. Now Neon. Varys's painted eyes fluttered. Indeed. Yet consider hostages within. Should King Stannis breach the gates, Sansa Stark will be bargaining chip. Perhaps also the Baratheon bastard. Gendry, was it? Rumors swirl of his escape from the city's smithies. Cersei's features hardened. We keep what tools we have. Double guard on Stark girl. As you wish. Varys bowed so low his pendulous sleeves brushed stone. Yet remember, a tool poorly handled cuts the wielder. Along the Blackwater's lower reaches, Davos Seaworth guided barges bearing grain and wounded toward a small wharf beneath the ruined holdfast of Sow's Hill. Evening glowed purple. Frogs chirred in reed beds. Cicadas' song pulsed warm. His eldest son, Dale, stood at tiller of the lee barge. Voice raised in chanty. Davos smiled. The sea. A lover he left for duty, sent brackish scent upstream to remind him of salt life. Atop the bluff lay a shrine-like stand of weirwoods where red leaves fanned like blood-soaked hands. Davos climbed path to confer with Melisandre, who knelt before the carved face from ages old, ruby throbbing. Firelight pooled around her, though no torch burned. The black and red of her shadow draped root and stone. "You summon me?" Davos asked. She opened eyes glowing furnace amber. "I smell dissent. In camps, tongues wag. Northmen fear the Lord of Light's fire. Stormlanders scorn wolf totems. Two armies yoked in need, not faith. The moment of test approaches." Davos crossed arms. "War always tests. The men bleed together. Unity in blood outweighs fear." "None." She rose fluid as flame, silk whispering. "Yet cracks widen if not filled by fire. Show them the true king's power. I have enough charred men in memory." Davos snapped quietly, thinking of Storm's End's righteous burnings. Men follow Stannis for law, not pyres. Melisandre's smile curved cruel and compassionate at once. Law fails where shadow thrives. Tonight I shall birth a sign. Attend. Davos's stomach nodded, recalling the shadow at Renly's tent. Black, silent, deadly. He swallowed rage. "Keep your shadows. We win with swords." Namdanti. Without sacrifice, sword snap. She stepped to the edge, staring at the barge's lamplit on river. "Soon fire will cleanse our enemies, and your soul will understand." Davos exhaled, quietly begging the mother for guidance, for this red priestess to find restraint. But mothers answered seldom in war. Beside captured wagons, Tywin Lannister sat on a camp stool, quill in shackled hand, writing with calm strokes while torch blazed. Davos visited after meeting Melisandre, seeking solace in calculated certainty rather than mysticism. He greeted the lion with nod. Tywin gestured at parchment. "Counting," the prisoner explained. "Even caged, I calculate values. How many stags and wolves will die tomorrow? What are they worth in wheat, in daughters, in dynastic stability? Numbers comfort in chaos." Davos noted the sharpened focus, the refusal to concede intangible defeat. A man who lost field yet tallies horses may plan new theft. Tywin's smile twitched. "Perceptive. I study weaknesses. Your king, he carries righteousness like millstone. Weight serves while feet stand on stone. On mud, it drags him under." "Better." Davos folded arms across salt-stiff surcoat. "Stannis stands on stone enough. We shall see." Tywin dipped quill again. "Tell him my compliments on his caution. He spares captive soldiers. Wise. Yet those freed prisoners will return to fight. Wise men sometimes choose generous path over shrewd." Eyes glittered. "Remind him generosity is coin that buys loyalty only while purse stays heavy." Davos turned away, heart unsettled. Around him, night deepened, full of insect hum and distant laughter where soldiers shared ale. Somewhere past tents, wolves howled. Stark men taught their dogs to mimic the dire beast. The sound joined chorus of war's uneasy lullaby. 2 dawns later, the great host uncoiled southward like two-headed serpent. Robb led van with his outriders, banners rippling wolves across morning. Stannis rode the main column, Davos sailing parallel with boats hugging river bends. Supply herds kicked dust. Smiths trudged towing forges. Bells on outrider necks kept pace. Eyes looked always at horizon for first glimpse of Blackwater Bay's glimmer taut. Progress slowed where rains had turned roads to treacle. Axles snapped, horses bogged. Northmen, accustomed to snow, cursed southern mire. Stormlanders mocked them, until an entire baggage cart disappeared in sucking peat, at which point all cursed together. Still, they pressed. At dusk on third day, Robb's scouts crested Chalk Ridge and saw the bay, a dull silver dish in twilight. Columns of smoke rose behind city walls. Forges, bakeries, maybe burning slums. The walls themselves bristled crenellations. Banners red and gold, barbed spires. The red keep flamed vermilion in last light. Robb summoned Stannis to vantage. The older king studied defenses through iron spyglass. Great city, he murmured, not with admiration but resolve. Great gates hide rot. Robb pointed to a dark smear across Rivermouth. Boom chain. Stannis nodded. They remember father's fleets. Wildfire stores. Robb asked. Voice hushed. Rumor. Stannis' jaw set. We'll treat rumor as certainty. He closed spyglass. Tomorrow we encircle. Cut roads. Wait for Davos to maneuver past chain at high tide. Then we test walls. Then. Robb noted calluses on Stannis' hand, deeper than his father's, though Ned had trained with both blade and quill. War and justice had carved Stannis into oak in endless storm. Robb wondered what shape those storms would whittle him. They rode back to camp where banners staked fields north of city, each pavilion lit like lantern cluster. At council fire that night, Greatjon proposed immediate assault. Break gate, break bastards, sup in throne room by dawn. Galbart Glover urged cautious siege. Melisandre offered to lift red gold torch, let flames lick walls and hearts alike. Davos suggested test of chain, stealthy sabotage. Stannis listened, eyes hooded. At length he spoke. We attack at dawn from river and land simultaneously. Davos sails upriver under darkness, disguised as fishermen to scout chain and wildfire. Stormlander sappers tunnel toward Gate of the Gods. Northmen hold the Kin's Road to intercept any Tyrell reinforcement. Within 3 days, walls or will must break. Robb remained silent until council dissolved. Only then did he draw Stannis aside. If we breach, I want Sansa protected. Yes, Stannis said simply. She is hostage of value, also your blood. I shall assign Davos to extraction once Gate falls. Robb exhaled thanks, moved to leave, paused. And Tywin? Move him with supply column behind ridge. His cheeks flushed with remembered guilt. Fear that prisoner might die in crossfire. Lose leverage to spare Sansa. Fear to name out loud. Stannis nodded curt. Soldierly. Decisions taken. Night crept heavy. In Melisandre's scarlet tent, coals burned unnatural blue. She sat cross-legged before a brass bowl full of rainwater. Into its mirror she dripped a prisoner's blood, taken from a Lannister captain's still seeping wound. Ripples widened, shaping ghostly silhouettes. Flames on water, wolves howling. A stag pierced by arrows. A young king kneeling in snow. Sword shattered. Her eyes widened, whispers parted her lips. A silhouette of a lion's throne toppling no longer appeared, replaced by 3 dragon shadows, spiraling in smoldering sky. She leaned closer, ruby throbbing like heartbeat. Fire showed truths, but rarely explained them. She saw chains break, but not which. She saw wildfire devour, but not whose men burned. She saw a boy with an iron crown of ice, his breath frost, his gaze ancient. She murmured to the water, Azor Ahai. Where are you? The bowl cracked, water steaming. She inhaled smoke. Satisfied. Prophecy scalded those too timid to sip. Within King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister slammed fist on map table, scattering carved towers. Chain incomplete, Halline. You promised. The wizened alchemist shrugged, fingers stained green. Braziers of wildfire ready, my lord. Chain forging stumbles on shortage of pure pig iron. The guilds whinge about tariffs. Nimini? Tariffs. Tyrion spat wine. I will throttle tariffs. Fetch every blacksmith, pay in silver ×3. Helene bowed and fled. Bronn lounged in high-back chair, boot on armrest. Might be easier to bottle our wildfire by their camp and spark it off. Supposing their scouts fail to sniff 10,000 jars creeping through fields? Tyrion massaged temples. No. We hold them at river. If chain snaps, city burns before wolves breach. Bronn smirked. Always silver lining. Tyrion sighed. That silver lining is green and explodes. We must not let Stannis' smuggler circumvent. He stopped. Outside, bells clanged. Small bells, alarm pattern 5. Riot in bread, square. Tyrion called for helm, scuttled out, cloak swirling. By torchlight, hundreds of gaunt citizens surged near Hendrik's granary, where gold cloaks attempted to disperse them with spears. Chants. Bread for children. Bread. Rocks flew. A gold cloak toppled. Helmet ringing. The tide roared forward. Tyrion mounted barrel, shouted through speaking trumpet. Quiet, or I'll feed you to the queen's pyromancers. Silence faltered, then edged back as men glimpsed Imp's mismatched eyes reflecting fury. Tyrion gestured to carts drawn behind shield wall. Sacks of grain commandeered from spice warehouses. 1 sack per family. No pushing or you'll get ashes instead. Order formed, grudging. Tyrion leaned toward Bronn. Hold them 2 days with bread and fear. Bronn shrugged. They bite either way, but signaled his sellswords to oversee distribution. Tyrion returned to map room. Ziga plays out before first arrow. Hunger, rumors, hearts. He wondered if Stannis or that wolf boy understood hearts. Perhaps Cersei lacked the knack as well. He alone might keep this city from tearing its own belly. Dawn glazed the bay with pewter sheen. Davos and Dale rowed a low-draft skiff, disguised in lobster baskets toward the boon chain. Skiff's hull scraped weed-slimed pilings. Tide peaked, lifting chain nearly slack beneath water. Davos dipped tarred fingers overboard. Greenish slick-hugged pilings, residue of wildfire shipments spilled. He frowned, picturing barrels stacked deep under King's Landing, volatile as pride. He signaled Dale to anchor behind a warehouse pile. 2 lanterns ahead swayed where sentries patrolled catwalk. Cock. Davos waited for their arc to turn, then slid into water. Blades strapped, climbing barnacle-encrusted pier to inspect riveted links. Iron bars near midpoint gleamed newer. Repairs half finished. Elsewhere pitted rust offered lattice to pry. He prowled along, counting footboards, memorizing gap where chains sagged low enough to submerge under tide. Tonight, under new moon, his black-hulled ships might slip across with muffled oars. One daring run to land assault men inside harbor. Returning to skiff, Davos scraped knuckles on rock and bled. He pressed wound against salt to seal. Pain reminded him of vows. They rowed back upstream under haze. On shore, storm crows cawed. 4 miles north, Robb oversaw entrenchments along King's Road. Archers dug firing pits. Pikemen hammered stakes angled outward. Maester Luwin, sent south from Winterfell by Catelyn's command, arrived with raven harness bag bulging letters. He reported movement of Bolton levies, Frey outriders, massing at the crossing. Robb dismissed worries, his flank secure while camps stretched shield to sea. Yet night chill gnawed at him, whispering of crooks inside his own ranks. He visited Tywin's wagon cage. The lord sat cross-legged reading what appeared to be a ledger of wine shipments. Majesty, Tywin greeted unbowed. Robb lingered outside bars. We ride within a day, your walls will fall. Tywin closed ledger. War teaches humility, or should. I misjudged your tenacity, young wolf. Yet you misjudged the capital's fire. Even if you take it, you will hold a corpse. Robb ignored bait. Send letters to your daughter. Yield, open gates, free my sister. End bloodshed. Tywin's lips thin. Cersei yields to no demand carrying threat to her child. You would do the same. Perhaps. But I would not starve tens of thousands behind me. Tywin shrugged in chains, gesture almost elegant. We do what necessity dictates. Robb departed unsatisfied. He passed Melisandre standing beyond torch circle, watching Tywin with heedless desire. When she noticed Robb, her smile gleamed. A lion's soul is potent fuel. Robb recoiled. You will not burn prisoners. Lord of Light chooses, she answered. Robb clutched sword hilt, then stalked away to gather thoughts in crisp night air scented by wild mint crushed under boot. The first clash of siege lines erupted not at massive gates, but along muddy King's Road, south of camps. A foraging party of Northmen stumbled upon a Lannister cavalry sortie seeking fresh horses. Arrows flew, pikemen formed wall. Noise raised alarm horns. Fighting spilled into trenchworks before Robb could muster reserves. Galbart Glover's men held firm until Stormlanders reinforced, pushing Lannister riders back into dust. 20 enemy dead, 6 captured, 1 message scroll recovered. Coordinates for night infiltration of wolf banners. Robb convened war council with Stannis by torch. Scroll indicated Varys had eyes in their camp. Stannis ordered root and branch search at dawn. Robb proposed decoys. They argued until Catelyn intervened. Calm yet firm. Hunt the spider. Yes, but do not snare your own with mistrust. Stannis accepted reluctantly. Robb thanked quietly. That same midnight, Arya Stark, disguised as Tywin's cupbearer, no longer but traveling with Yoren's remnant, climbed riverbank north of city, hearing distant drums of Robb's host. Not yet knowing brother commanded half the realm. She whispered list of names, last word swirling like river eddy. Joffrey Conti. Fate seemed to breathe on nape of her neck. Dawn assault day broke thick with heat haze, unusual for turn of autumn. Drumbeats rolled from Robb's camp. Thrum of northern war, deeper boom of Stormlander cadence. Ziga towers creaked as oxen hauled them into orchard fields west of Lion Gate. Engineers hammered braces. Robb rode line, coaxing courage. Stannis oversaw sapper crews at Gate of the Gods. From city walls, trumpets shrilled challenge. Lannister archers lined battlements, mail gleaming red. Atop King's Gate, Joffrey himself appeared in golden helm, shaped like roaring lion, crossbow in manicured hands. Sansa watched from behind, heart fluttering between hope and dread as she recognized banners of Winterfell across fields. Tears blurred her vision, but she stood still. Movement invited kettle-black slap. On the river, Davos black-hulled longships emerged around bend under dawn fog. Atop masts flew no banners. Hulls silent. Soldiers crouched beneath gunwales. Faces smeared ash. They threaded among fisher skiffs, oars dipping soft. In vanguard, Davos steered Black Betha straight at sagging section of chain timed, with tide's slackest point. Water hissed under prow. Crew held breath. On shore, pyromancers waited at covered cauldrons along walls. Tyrion paced between them, face shining sweat. He scanned water, predicting moment to unleash green hell once enemy fleet committed. When first silent ship glided under Mud Gate, he signaled. But at that same instant, Davos loosed dark powder kegs from bow. They drifted toward cauldron posts. First wildfire jar soared overhead, ignited mid-flight. Yet explosions spattered harmlessly into tide as crew hauled chain winches wrong direction. Davos men had climbed pilings ahead of time and slain operators. Chain sagged, creating gap. Black Betha surged through. Tyrion cursed, sprinted for second firing station. Rhythms of battle cascaded. Horns from walls, drums from fields, roar of citizens crowding gates to watch. Ziga towers lurched into trenches. Archers exchanged storms of shafts. Sappers used willow-framed mantlets to scuttle close and plant oil pots. Atop Ziga tower bearing direwolf banner, gray wind snarled down at parapet. Robb ascended after him, sword drawn. They met first line of Lion Gate defenders, gold cloaks under Sir Jacelyn Bywater, dutiful though wary of Lannister paymasters. Gray wind leapt, knocking a man from wall. Robb parried halberd, cleaved helm's cheek. Direwolf and master advanced step by step, establishing tiny foothold. Elsewhere, Stannis led charge through breached palisade near Gate of the Gods, where sappers collapsed wooden outwork with black powder, stolen from alchemists. Smoke and flame belched. Stannis strode amid sparks, banner of crowned stag behind, voice cold steel. "Forward!" Stormlander spears poured through like water into cracked dam. Inside city riot blossomed. Small folk cheered wolves and stags. Others, fearing slaughter, clambered toward septs. Bells rang confusion. Septons preached calm. Cersei observed from Tower of the Hand, crimson smile tight as lacing. She ordered Joffrey escorted inside, yet he refused, firing crossbow again and again until arrow ricocheted near his helm, nicking ear. He shrieked. A loud retreat. Tyrion reached Mudgate Battery, ordered Pyromancer there to ignite central fuse line for barrels anchored mid-channel. But Davos ships had curved inside chain and now rode madly along dockfront. The barrels floated among Lannister patrol craft. If fired, green fire would consume friend foes. Tyrion spat. Cut lines. Push barrels clear. Men scrambled. Confusion reigned. One torch slipped from shaking hand. Wildfire touched slick. A green roar blossomed, enormous, hungry. River erupted into jade inferno, hulls vaporizing, screams turning to steam. Tyrion was hurled against battlement. Flames coiled, untouched by water, drifting like wraiths over tide. They devoured 3 Lannister boats, 2 allied longships, and carved a burning corridor. Yet fortune flickered for Davos. Black Betha had passed further upstream, beaching at quay below Dragon Gate. Flames behind now cut pursuit. He leapt to pier, drew sword. Off, Borm wedge. Stormlanders poured out, seized warehouses, speared guards. Within minutes, they held Riverside District, raising black stag and onion pennant. On landward wall, Robb's tower locked into crenellation. Ramp slashed down. Northern men flooded parapet, shouting, "Winterfell!" Arrowfire thick. Gray wind ranged ahead until crossbow bolt pierced shoulder. He yelped, stumbled but recovered, fury redoubling. Robb felt shock like own flesh split but pressed forward, dragging Wolf into relative cover behind Merlin. Maester, he'd bring later, now push. Catelyn below on horse saw tower breach, heart clenched. She commanded reserves. Tully pikemen advanced, banners rippling trout. House Mormont women roared bear calls. A second siege tower of storms and reached wall near pincers. Stannis' second wave ascended. Inside corridors, Baratheon and Stark men collided in clashing arcs with gold cloaks and Lannister knights. Marble halls rang with clangor, tapestries torn for tourniquets, floors slick. Tyrion, bleeding from ear, rallied Westermen to cordon Inner Bailey. He vaulted onto overturned wagon, hacking at invading shapes with axe. For once he loved height, vantage to direct. "Hold line," he shouted, "push them to Serpent's Pit." When a Mormont woman nearly cleaved him, he ducked, struck knee, toppling her. Braun emerged with sellswords, eyes bright at promise of plunder. "Imp, gate behind flanks open, we can funnel them." Tyrion barked assent. They dragged iron grates. Meanwhile, Davos's wedge progressed from docks toward Street of Flower. Small folk opening doors to gift bread, wine, direction to secret postern below Septite. Davos accepted but urged them inside. He glimpsed the Sept of Baelor Dome beyond rooftops, King's Justice and Father's Bone somewhere beneath. He pressed on. At Red Keep's base, Stannis rallied battered line, storming ramp beyond King's Gate, where defenders wavered after wildfire misfire created chaos. He led personally, shield high, blade glowing in dawn-like hue from forging. Some men muttered Lightbringer, though the sword remained plain steel. But his presence, resolute, compelled courage. They drove wedge into courtyard. Suddenly shadow parted between smoke columns. A great scythed chariot pulled by armored destriers thundered from stables. Cersei's last gambit. Mounted crossbows lined its sides, spitting bolts. Northern spearmen scattered. Robb, now inside wall section, saw machine hurtling toward gap where his ladder detachments climbed. If it reached, would mow hundreds. He whistled sharp. Gray wind, limped but obeyed, bounding ahead to spook horses. Wolf's bloodthirst fiddled reins, team veered. Chariot careened into stone postern, wheels shattering. Bolts sprayed sky, crash drowned by crowd roar. In throne room, Cersei barred doors, summoned Pycelle, demanded potent dream wine draught for Prince Tommen, preparing to smuggle him by hidden stairs if siege turned. Sansa was ushered too, trembling. Cersei stroked her hair with false gentility. "Pray for your brother's safe surrender," Queen murmured. Sansa glimpsed smolder out windows. Green arcs of fire, black smoke, flutter of direwolf banners. For first time she believed Robb might truly be near. Hustle of boots outside shook doors. Cersei drew dagger, gestured at Sansa. "If wolves enter, little dove will perish first." Sansa closed eyes, whispered half-remembered Winterfell prayer. By midday battle lines blurred into pockets across city. Market Square changed hands thrice. Wildfire still fumed on river, though ebbing. Casualties enormous on both sides. Stannis and Rob's commanders converged near Aegon's High Hill, on captured Holdfast rooftop, establishing joint signal station. Crows dispatched to camps for reinforcement. Horns answered. Robb collapsed onto parapet stone, chest heaving. Blood dried on hair, Wolf still at flank limping but alive. Stannis climbed beside, eyes scanning fires. He spoke low. Walls breached. Red keep remains. One more push. Robb wiped sweat. "My men spent. Yours too." Stannis shook head. "We endure." Catelyn rode upstairs. Face streaked soot. Scouts report Tyrell banners approaching from south. At least 15,000. Perhaps 2 days' ride. Robb's heart sank. Stannis' jaw flexed. "We take keep before roses bloom. Hold city then parley." Robb nodded. Then together, they clasped forearms. Short, hard gesture. The Union time had sought to crack hardened in common peril. Below, Davos advanced through clutter of alley when arrow struck his calf. He stumbled. Dale caught him. "Father!" "On," Davos hissed. "Keep pushing." To Sept stare. They reached courtyard of Baelors, Sept to find gold cloaks establishing fallback perimeter. Dale rallied Stormlanders. Battle joined under statue of the father. Stone saints looked down on carnage with indifferent stares. Nearby, Arya slipped through commotion, dressed as boy runner. She saw half-familiar banners. Glimpsed face of man who once spoke kindly at Harrenhal. Davos. Instinct tugged. "Friend?" She edged closer when melee erupted. Ducked beneath horse corpse. Stray blade chopped wood near cheek. She cursed, scrambled, remembering stillness lessons of Syrio. She crept behind column, scanning for escape path that might lead to brother. Tyrion rallied final defense line at gate of the Red Keep. All he could gather, Lannister guards, Kettleblacks, even Pycelle with heavy chain mace. When Robb's vanguard pushed into courtyard, Tyrion called challenge. Yelder city burns by wildfire caches, every last jar. Robb emerged through arch, shield high. "You burn your own people. Better dead than serve to wolves." Tyrion puffed, though fear drained face. Dennis strode up, helm gone, hair plastered with sweat. "No need, imp. Your men may leave. Joffrey shall face trial." Tyrion shook head. "My sister would sooner, in fact is likely now. Ignite barrels under great septi." A tremor rippled ground. Distant rumble suggested some explosion. Robb advanced step. "Where is she?" "Throne room." Tyrion pointed with axe. "Convince her fast." As they spoke, clamor arose at rear. Gold cloaks opened gates, swords down. Davos column surged in from street, bearing stag banner. Tyrion sagged. Small folk inside cheered faint. Robb motioned guards to seize Tyrion gently. "Your vials may yet cause harm. Show us caches and we spare common folk." Tyrion surrendered, exhaustion eclipsing pride. "I'll take you," he muttered. "Provided someone stops my sister first." Inside throne room, candles guttered from drafts, blowing through arrow-slit. Cersei had shattered to spy on courtyard. She paced before Iron Throne, dragging Sansa by wrist. Tommen slept drugged on cushion. Pycelle fussed over vials near dais. "One swallow for the king, one for the queen, one for the little bird," Cersei sang softly. Doors banged. Outside clash of arms, yells, heavy thud of ram. Sansa's pulse flew. Cersei pressed dagger hilt into her palm, guiding blade to her throat. "Quiet, dove." Ram struck again. Splinters rained. Suddenly, dark figure poured from side corridor. Sandor Clegane. Smoke blackened his cloak, eyes feral. "Your Grace," he growled. "City's lost. Flames everywhere. I'm leaving." Cersei snapped. "Deserter." Sandor shrugged. "Never sworn to burn." He turned to Sansa. "Girl, come." "Your brother's men inside walls." "Nanuxumor." Cersei raised dagger. Sandor advanced, sword half drawn. For heartbeat, stalemate, trembled. Then the doors burst. Robb stark. Armor scarred, gray wind at heel despite limp. Stannis flanking, soldiers pouring. Robb's gaze locked on Sansa, on blade at sister's throat. Time slowed. Cersei jerked Sansa closer. "Touch me, she dies." Robb leveled sword, voice trembling. "Release her. You have lost." "Never," Cersei hissed. "Joffrey is king. Lannisters pay debts." Stannis raised hand, uttered something unheard. Behind him Melisandre entered, ruby blazing. She extended palms, flame danced inside. Cersei's eyes widened, momentary terror. Blade tip wavered. Sandor chose his breath. He lunged, slapping dagger from Cersei's hand, even as gray wind leapt to interpose. Blade clanged, Cersei shrieked. Robb surged, shielding Sansa, drawing her back. Soldiers seized Queen. Pycelle squealed, spilled vials. Catelyn arrived moments later, tears streaming as she clasped firstborn daughter. Stark circle closed around. Stannis walked to Iron Throne, laid hand on jagged arm. No crown graced him, yet Hall fell silent. Melisandre's smile curved. Tyrion limped in with Davos, surveyed tableau, sighed. "7 hells. What now?" Stannis turned to Robb. "The city is ours. The war half won. Remainder lies with Tyrell host, Ironborn raids, and lords yet to choose daylight." Robb held Sansa, eyes watery. "And with winter." Snowflakes drifted through shattered window, sparse but chilling. South rarely saw frost this early. Melisandre whispered. "The long night gathers." Outside, bells tolled not alarm but surrender, their toll climbing sky where smoke parted. Citizens ventured into streets, blinking at foreign banners, uncertain whether liberation or conquest perched upon ramparts. Fires still smoldered. Green embers glowed on tide. Yet, dawn sun speared through, painting towers gold. In courtyard, Tywin Lannister listened to bells, closed eyes. "So the lions sleep," he murmured. Davos answered, "Perhaps dream of second roar." Tywin crooked a brow. "They wake." "Always." Davos led him toward secure cell beneath Red Keep, but Tywin's calm forced reflection. Victory seldom final. On Bailey Wall, Arya watched reunions. Tears hot. She had reached inside. Now across yard mother embraced sister and brother. Yet she lingered in shadows, still disguised, unsure if path of vengeance allowed homecoming. She slipped away unnoticed. Robb and Stannis met again on balcony of Tower of the Hand that afternoon. Hitch of pain knitted them. Gray wind bandaged at feet. Stannis' shoulder gashed. Below, city buzzed with half-fearful relief. Robb spoke first. "Gratitude. Without storm's end, we'd still batter gates." Stannis shook head. "Without northern fury, my men break." They stood silent for a long while. Snow fluttered again, dissolving on hot stone. Far-off horns signaled Tyrell approach. Banners of golden rose pricked horizon like distant blue. Another war awaited. Robb inhaled winter tang and smoke. "Let them come. This time we choose ground." Stannis' lips tightened, not quite smile, but something akin. Ground and law. Night would fall soon. with choices, crowns, fates, oaths. Fires still burned, but in their glow 2 kings began forging fragile future, tempered by wolf fang and staghorn, hammered against anvil of war's cost, cooled in tears of mothers and daughters. In gathering dusk, those sparks cast long shadows, stretching beyond Red Keep, beyond Crownlands, into snows of north and deserts of Dorne, into stories yet unwritten. The smoke of conquest still moiled among the roofs. When the first outriders of the Reach appeared on the southern horizon, pennants of green and gold, flickering like fresh buds in a wasteland of ash. On the walls of King's Landing, walls now defaced by twin banners, direwolf and crowned stag. Lookouts muttered at the sight of so much ordered beauty rolling toward them. Fields of spears gleaming under new polished helms, mounted knights in buttersoft cloaks, wagons decked with flowering quilts to hide the iron within. It seemed the very notion of peace was arriving, fragrant and smug, to demand an accounting of the carnage. Robb Stark watched from the Tower of the Hand, a raw wind tugging brown curls across his brow. The bite of autumn sharpened each breath, yet sweat still dampened his collar from the fray that had finally broken the Red Keep. Gray wind lay at his boots, patched shoulder bandaged, yellow eyes following every twitch below. Across the parapet Stannis Baratheon stood, rigid, gauntleted fingers laced behind him. Where Robb's stare wandered, Stannis' gaze clamped upon the approaching host as though already measuring its bones. "They come on schedule," Stannis said, voice hard as a smithy's anvil. Robb answered with a shrug that betrayed nerves he would show no other. They were Renly's once. They swore to Joffrey after. Now they proffer roses to whichever garden yields the sweetest sun. Stannis' mouth twitched. Something less than a smile, more than mere irritation. Sun's set. Law endures. He turned away to descend the stair. Robb followed, boot heels echoing through the stone throat of the tower. In the yard below, soldiers hacked splintered barricades into cookfire fuel. Grooms dragged Lannister corpses toward a growing pyre. The stink of death overlaid every other smell. Horse, pitch, burnt oak, old fear. Yet beneath it Robb detected something startling and sweet. Bakers at the king's gate, pressing captured flour into ragged rounds of bread to calm the starving mob. Peace did not grow, it was kneaded, scorched, swallowed. They parted at the base of the stair. Stannis strode toward the Maegor's Hill courtyard where Davos waited with a sheaf of reports. Robb pushed through the back corridors of the keep, needing a moment's privacy before the next council. Sansa was ensconced in a solar off the Queen's ballroom with their mother, needles still trembling in her hand from a tapestry left half-finished 3 reigns ago. Arya, astonishing thought, was somewhere in the lower city, and the watch combed every barn and alley in search of a lean girl answering to half a dozen names. Bran and Rickon remained his aching silence. All of them, all his kin, weighed on him like soaked fur, and for one heartbeat he wanted only to ride into the Riverlands and vanish. But kings do not vanish. They multiply. He straightened shoulders, steered his steps toward the council chamber, and pushed open doors to a chaos of voices. The chamber smelled of parchment, damp wool, and clashing tempers. Galbart Glover and Sir Edmure Tully argued over ration levies from the captured granaries. Meg Mormont thumped the butt of her axe on the flagstones each time they talked too long. Sir Davos leaned over a map with Brynden Tully, while Tyrion Lannister, not prisoner now but not free either, scribbled marginal notes with his left hand, the right strapped in a sling. Melisandre, flame-haired and flame-eyed, stood by the hearth, breathing the chimney's drafts as though they were scripture. Stannis entered, helm tucked beneath an elbow. Robb took the seat Ned Stark had once occupied in this very room, back when King Robert's laughter could still rattle the rafters. Now that chair felt like an oubliette. He cleared his throat. "Reports first," he said. "Then, the Tyrell matter." Galbart surrendered the floor to Davos, who delivered numbers in a seafarer's clipped cadence. 500 barrels of grain salvageable, 2,000 wounded of varying gravity, 3 dozen street fires seething uncontrolled. But the wildfire pits under the city had been secured. Thanks to Tyrion's diagrams, and a night's frantic labor by Davos' own lads. The chain across the Blackwater lay half sunk, with Stormlander smiths already melting its links to reforge into spearheads. Robb found himself nodding. Each account, if bleak, at least ended in a line of forward motion. When the Onion Knight finished, Tyrion rose on the opposite side of the table. His face, battered and caked with soot, had aged a decade in a day. "And since you trust me to speak freely," he said, "I add news the small folk will not. Lord Varys has disappeared. My sources think he quit the tunnels at dawn, in company of 3 child informers and a dancer from Bravos. No one knows his destination." Stannis grunted. "Spiders flee any torchlight." "He left no web behind," Tyrion returned, lifting disfigured shoulder in apology. "What plots he spun may still twitch." Melisandre's ruby shimmered. "A shadow herder has many holes, but the light finds all." "Lovely," Tyrion muttered. He resumed his seat. Robb rapped knuckles once. "The Reach, then. Numbers?" Edmure handed up a roll of vellum dragged from the Citadel's last census. 15,000 heavy infantry, near 7 of mounted knights, and gods knew how many levies straggling behind to carry ale and roses. The real might, Edmure pointed out, was food. Whatever Highgarden lacked in iron discipline, it grew in barley, apples, onions, and honey. It could starve a city, or feed one through winter. Meg Mormont spat on the rushes. "They fed Joffrey well enough till yesterday." Galbart shrugged. "Coin moves bellies." Stannis' gauntlet clenched. "And coin shall move them again. I will not purchase allegiance with promises. They will kneel or break." Robb felt the room's tension spool tighter. "The Tyrells fight for advantage," he said, trying for calm. "Give them some and they'll plant gardens atop our graves." He gestured toward Tyrion's quill. "Yet we need food. And ships. Storm's End and Winterfell together can't feed this city through a siege of cold. We parley, at least." Stannis' face remained flint. Davos cleared his throat, offered. "If I may, your grace, every deal has 2 prices, one told, one owed. Best know both before we slam the door." No one spoke for the space of 10 heartbeats. Then Stannis nodded. "Very well. The Tyrells may send envoys at sundown, but I will greet them on neutral ground." "Indiran." "Which ground?" Galbart asked. Stannis' stare drifted to Melisandre. "The dragon pit, broken enough to be no man's hall, yet high enough for eyes to watch for treachery." "Fitting," Tyrion said dryly. "House of dead dragons to debate dying kingdoms." He scrawled a final note. The dragon pit towered on Rhaenys' hill. Half its ribs collapsed from century-old riots. Dusk poured copper across the shattered dome as 3 riders picked their way up the rubble-lipped road. Sir Loras Tyrell in enameled jade breastplate, Lord Mathis Rowan carrying the peace banner, and the Lady Olenna herself, cloaked in darkest mourning garb for a husband 20 years dead. An escort of 50 halberdiers waited at the hill's base. Only the 3 reputed to speak for Highgarden advanced to the ruin's mouth. Inside the vast shell, braziers ringed a flattened dais cut from fallen stone. Stannis stood at its center beneath banners of the crowned stag and direwolf. Melisandre at his right shoulder, Davos at his left, while Robb flanked with Catelyn and the Greatjon. Shadows perched like bats high in the broken rafters. Archers of both armies, arrows knocked. Lady Olenna's sharp gaze ticked off every danger, every bowstring. Then she smiled, thin and wry. "My goodness, such company, and no privy counselors, such a waste of fashionable whispering." She tapped the butt of her cane. "Let us begin. The Reach does not linger where dust unsettles the lungs." "None." Stannis inclined his head the barest fraction. Courtliness scraped to the quick. "State your terms." Rowan produced a pale scroll, but Olenna plucked it from him. "Please. We'll not bore ourselves with clumsy recitations. The gist. My grandson Willis will open his granaries to King's Landing, free of tithe, for the duration of 2 seasons. In return, my son Mace is confirmed as Lord Paramount of the Reach under whichever monarch rules, and my granddaughter Margaery is betrothed to that monarch, assuming he is unmarried and free to wed." Manon. Her eyes flicked between Stannis' hard jaw. and the gray trim of Robb's collar. Sadly, I see two excellent candidates, both already encumbered. One by a red priestess eager to claim his bed for shadows. The other by some river girl I hear very little about. Tragic. Robb's cheeks burned. The memory of Jane Westerling, a promise made in grief, sealed with desperate tenderness, flashed hot. He caught his mother's warning gaze before words spilled. Stannis spoke first. I have a lawful wife and no need for roses. Food may be bought by coin, not vows. Sir Loras' knuckles whitened on sword hilt. Do not slight my sister. Olenna flicked a hand. Be still, sweetling. We came to bargain, not bristle. She turned again to Robb. The North cannot be forced to harvest in winter. Highgarden can. Marry and I'll feed your wolves until the snows melt. Catelyn stepped forward, voice steeled by courtesy. My son is promised. Promises crack like eggs, Olenna said. Better omelets than rot. A heartbeat's hush followed, broken only by the hiss of torches. Then Stannis said, the Iron Throne stands for law. You propose to sell allegiance for bed and bread. I refuse. Your host will disarm and swear fealty, or it will disperse under sword. Choose. Rowan bristled. Those are not terms of negotiation. They are, Stannis answered. The terms of justice. Melisandre's ruby burned brighter. Beneath its glow, Sir Loras flinched as though heat seared him. Olenna's eyes narrowed. Justice? I have yet to see it ride in any king's train. She tapped her cane again. Very well, Lord Stag. Let us leave the wolves to gnaw your pride when the city hungers. Come, Sir Loras. They turned. Robb's heart lurched, the moment yawed like ice cracking underfoot. He forced words out. Lady Olenna. But Stannis' mailed hand rose. Parley is finished. Archers overhead clattered arrows into quivers, a warning cold as sleet. The Reach riders mounted and withdrew, silhouettes shrinking down the hill. Robb felt fury churn his gut. We need food. We need their host, not at our throats. Need. Stannis rounded on him. Need bends to law, not law to need. I will not trade my crown for a bushel. Then we may lose both. Robb snapped, voice louder than intended. The Great John's booming laugh broke tension. Let the flowers wilt, lad. Bears and wolves share winter fine. Catelyn pressed fingers to temples. Davos caught Robb's gaze, offered a weary shrug. No easy path. Melisandre's smile hinted at flames yet unseen. That night Robb could not rest. He left Grey Wind nursing by hearth, and wandered the corridors, sword belted over nightshirt. Stone passages whispered cold treachery. Every arch recalled how Lannisters once prowled these same halls after Robert's death. How quickly a victor becomes prey. He paused outside the chamber where Tyrion was kept, guarded but afforded comforts for his aid with the wildfire caches. The Imp's lamp still glowed through the door seam. Robb nodded to sentries, entered unannounced. Tyrion looked up from a stack of parchment crowned with a half-empty flagon. Majesty, he greeted, bite of sarcasm dulled by drink. Come to sample my vintage. It's no arbor gold, but after a siege one shouldn't quibble. Bayun? I need counsel, Robb said, surprising himself. Ah. And here I thought stark honor forbade the Whisperer's road. Tyrion poured a second cup, slid it across the table. Robb ignored it. Highgarden will not bend, he said. My men expect bread soon. Stannis refuses compromise. At this pace, we trade one siege for another, with Tyrell hosts outside and winter behind. Tyrion sipped. You grasp more than most kings in their first week. Problem. Stannis has law, but not love. You have love, but not leash. Marry them together, and perhaps the realm survives. Dynasty. Robb's knuckles whitened. I vowed? So did Stannis, Tyrion mused. Yet prophecy whispers in that red woman's ear. Vows become tinder when prophecy lights the match. He gestured at rolled parchments, emblazoned with the many-flowered seal of the Reach. The Tyrells wrote to me after my success at Blackwater, sent offers and threats like fruit baskets. They do not value Stannis iron. They value pageantry, pageants, pretty kings, and prettier queens. Give them a wedding, and they will forgive every wolf that ever nipped a shepherd's heel. Dawn. Robb thought of Jane lighting candles in the Westerling keep, trusting he'd return soon. A Southron girl, yes, but gentle. He could not cast her aside. Yet each starving child in Flea Bottom would feel the bruise of his fidelity. I will not break faith, he said. Tyrion shrugged. Then you must break bread somewhere else. The Trident can feed a city for a season, perhaps. Braavos might sell grain at ruinous price. But none deliver before snow closes the roads. Time, young wolf, is a harsher usurper than any lion. None. Robb left with that thought gnawing. He walked until dawn's chill grayed the windows. Snowflakes still drifted sporadically. The South's nervous apology to real winter, but enough to coat tiles in thin crystal. He thought of Winterfell's Godswood, hot springs steaming beneath snow-laden branches. Home felt distant as moonrise. Morning brought a raven from the wall. Maester Aemon's thin glyphs, warning that a white raven had flown from Old Town declaring winter officially come. Worse, patrols of the Night's Watch had vanished beyond the Frostfangs. Wildling fires burned in unnatural numbers. Robb read the message before the full council, words frosting their breath heavier than flurries outside. The dead walk in their tails, Edmure muttered, half-jest dying on his lips. Melisandre's eyes glowed. Cold shadows rise when light is weakest. The true war creeps south even now. Stannis listened, face carved from sorrow. His brothers had mocked such portents, he did not. He said only, we must hold the realm here before it is threatened there. But the stark fact remained. Winter would clamp road and river alike. Whatever food lay beyond Highgarden's lines would be trapped by ice or snow. Robb felt invisible walls closing tighter than any siege. Before midday bells, riders in Tyrell colors delivered a parchment. Invitation to a parley of queens. Cersei, they claimed, had been smuggled from her cell in the dark, and now lay under the Reach's protection outside the walls. If Stannis wished his enemy, and Robb his hostage, they must negotiate. The news struck the council like a thrown axe. Davos stared aghast. How had the queen escaped? Guards denied breach. But Tyrion smirked bitterly. My sister never lacked for shrewd vermin to gnaw her shackles. Stannis slammed fist on table. Splintering oak. Treachery festers while we bicker. March now, crush their camp. Robb cut in. We can't hurl wounded men at fresh knights in open field. The city's barely ours. The city means nothing if our enemies gather outside. Stannis snapped. Nor does it stand, Robb shot back, if half our garrison dies charging roses and their bloody thorns. The room erupted. Greyjohn shouting for a dawn assault. Melisandre promising fire to scatter blossoms. Catelyn pleading caution, while Tyrion muttered about wildfire caches still undiscovered. Only Davos kept silence until he slammed his dagger point into the map. Enough. The Onion Knight rarely raised voice. Every head turned. We sit in a tinderbox of hunger and pride. Storm and snow close. The Reach has gold and grain. We need both, but there's a coin rarer. He looked at Robb. Honor. Robb blinked. Explain. Parley, Davos said. A public one. Before the walls, with small folk watching. Bring Cersei, Tywin, every captive of name. Offer prisoner exchange. Their queen for food, free, not bartered. Show mercy. Show law tempered by compassion. If they refuse, the realm sees who starves the innocent. That shame will rot them quicker than blades. Silence rippled again. Then Stannis exhaled. A gamble. Davos nodded. The only one left. Robb felt tension slide from shoulders, replaced by dangerous hope. Then let's play. They staged the parley at Cobbler's Square, just inside the battered Lion Gate. A wide plaza circled by half-ruined tenements, overlooking the field where Tyrell tents bloomed beyond arrow range. Robb and Stannis rode out beneath banners, flanked by ringed shields. In their train marched prisoners, Tywin in plain cloak, wrists still manacled. Cersei cloaked in Reach green now, hair unbraided. Tommen stumble sleepy. and Joffrey nowhere. Rumor said Lady Olenna kept him bound and gagged inside a wagon to hush his tantrums. Small folk crowded balconies and cracked staircases, desperate for spectacle. Snowflakes melted on their excited cheeks. Wordless, they watched as the delegations faced each other across a cleared aisle. Lady Olenna stepped forward, minus her grandson and the banner of peace. "Your graces," she said, ice to each syllable. "I bring Queen Regent Cersei Lannister for exchange against Lord Tywin." "No," Stannis said before Robb could breathe. "Tywin remains prisoner of the lawful crown." Cersei laughed. "A brittle ring. Lawful? You raid the throne like pigs at a trough, styling yourselves saviors, while my son, the true king, languishes." Robb's horse stamped. Grey wind circled, hackles bristling. "Your son fled," Robb said. "Where is he?" Olenna's smile cut. "Safe. For now." Stannis' raised voice. "Hear my offer. The crown." He glanced to Robb, amended. "Kingship releases Cersei and Tommen to fair trial. In return, Highgarden opens its granaries, lowers arms, and swears fealty. House Tyrell retains its lands and titles. Refuse, and winter starves you outside our gates." "Named." A murmur rippled through the watchers. They knew hunger already. Olenna lifted her chin. "Feed the city now, and perhaps the mother will remember your mercy when the stranger rides through your ranks. But pledge or perish. We choose neither." She clapped. From the reach lines emerged a figure in fine blue linen. Celia Baratheon, Stannis' wife, cheeks hollow, eyes blazing devout fever. Beside her scuttled a gaunt child clutching a rag doll, Princess Shireen. The sight stunned Stannis mute. Olenna's voice rose. "Your queen came freely to our tents, fearful for her daughter amid your fires. She begs us shelter." The old woman's smile glittered knives. "So you see, your grace, roses do not lack for thorns." Gasps among the small folk turned to shouts of confusion. Stannis' face drained of color, then flushed red. "Selyse," he barked. "Return." But Selyse's gaze fixed on Melisandre with revulsion. "I will not. The Lord of Light burns children. I choose those who feed them." A tremor shook Stannis' frame. Melisandre stepped, but Stannis raised a shaking hand. "Back." Olenna folded arms. "There ends negotiation. We keep our captives. You keep yours. May the gods decide who starves first." She turned. The Reach contingent wheeled away. Selyse and Shireen swept among their ranks like swans swept up by sparrows. Shouts erupted. Some small folk cursed Tyrell treachery. Others hurled stones at Stannis' guard. A reliquary of law cracked before Robb's eyes. Tywin, watching, murmured low, so only Robb heard. "On stone topples a dam." Robb spurred his horse, intercepting Olenna's rear guard. "Wait." His voice cut air like northern hail. "Lady Selyse and Princess Shireen are my guests, not pawns. They may leave freely, but do not use them to poison a nation." Olenna spared him a curious sweep of the eyes. "You speak of poison while gripping a wolf's jaws." Robb reached into saddlebag, withdrew Ned Stark's old seal. "Dire wolf over broken tower. My father's word outlived him. I pledge in his name. Feed the city through winter, and no blade of mine will threaten Highgarden. Break that promise, and even winter's darkness will fear what comes." Silence. Wind curled snow across the flags at their horses' hooves. Grey wind howled once. Echoes rattled broken windows. Olenna considered, lips working. Then she nodded. "I accept the wolf's word. The stads I leave to the gods." Rowan signaled. A standard dipped. The Reach host began moving. Wagons turning toward Roserod. Not retreat, but redeployment. Carts of grain rolled forward, escorted by knights in trampled sod, but open-handed. Small folk erupted in cheers and tears, scrambling for first sacks. Robb wheeled back. Stannis met him with eyes of scorched iron. "You pledged the realm under my crown." "I pledged bread, not thrones," Robb said. "Starving peasants keep no laws." Stannis glared. "You undermine rule." Robb straightened. "I preserve it." A king serves the realm, not pride. Stannis looked away, muscles cording in his jaw. After a long moment he spoke quietly. We will finish this quarrel later. For now, feed them. It took 3 days to unload the grain. Tyrell teams worked under northern captains. Stormlander bakers toiled side by side with Reach cooks in commandeered inns. Loaves scented the alleys. Soup cauldrons steamed. Snow ceased, not melted, simply paused, as though even winter paused to nose the aroma. Yet behind that grace brewed darker currents. Reports reached Robb of Frey riders at Derry, Bolton men near Maidenpool, both claiming to answer his summons though none had been sent. Ravens to the twins returned unanswered. Catelyn counseled caution. Robb ordered patrols redoubled. Stannis retreated to his chambers, emerging only to convene war councils. Selysa's flight scorched him deeper than any defeat, and Melisandre's flame-cast sermons seemed to stoke rather than soothe. Davos worried, in whispers to Catelyn, that the king's soul might ride too near the edge where faith becomes fanatic. Meanwhile, Arya resurfaced. 2 Stark scouts found her in Flea Bottom, sword in hand, guarding a cluster of ragged orphans against a drunken sellsword. She had grown lean, fierce-eyed, hair hacked to uneven tufts. When brought before Robb in the Sept courtyard, she tried to hide behind bravado. But once Catelyn called her little sister, the girl's facade cracked, and she burst into tears against her mother's cloak. Grey Wind, recognizing her scent, snuffled at her hands in disbelief. The reunion brightened the camp like sudden torchlight, and furnished Robb with new urgency to stabilize the realm before any more Starks vanished. Night gathered heavy on the 6th day when Tyrell trumpets blared outside Lion Gate. Robb hurried to battlements, Greyjohn, Galbart, and Davos in tow. Below, a gilded wheeled cage had been drawn forward. Inside, chained to a high crossbar, writhed King Joffrey Baratheon. His once proud hair matted, his face bruised where gags had rubbed. A single placard hung on the bars. The garden prunes, Sir Loras, rode forward beneath white flag. For the peace of the realm, he called, the Reach surrenders King Joffrey, accused of crimes against his people. In exchange, we ask that Lord Tywin Lannister be delivered to Lady Olenna for just trial when the wars are ended. Robb cast a glance at Davos. The Onion Knight whispered, "This is poison in a goblet. Accept, and Stannis' claim strengthens. He alone of Robert's sons remains. Refuse, and Highgarden may turn." After brief counsel, Robb signaled assent. Tywin was brought forth, grim but unsurprised. At the gate pivot, the 2 cages passed. Son to captivity, father to custody of kin who had abandoned him. "You play Sivas well, Lord Tyrell," Tywin remarked aloud as he rode out. "Yet beware, dragons fly." No one understood at first. Only Tyrion, watching from window, caught the note, a portent that Daenerys Targaryen's sails might soon blot another horizon. When Joffrey's cage was hauled inside, small folk jeered, lobbed rotten turnips. Robb ordered the boy delivered to a secure room with maester and guards. The once king spat curses even as tears streaked cheeks. "Mother will burn you all." "I am king." "Not anymore," Robb said softly, and turned away. On the 7th dawn, a white raven of the citadel reached the keep. Grand Maester Gorman, old Pycelle, had expired of fright the night Cersei fled, read its message before assembly. Winter, real and unrelenting. Heavy snows already blanketed the neck. Carhold reported blizzards. The wall sent nothing after Aemon's previous letter. Ravens returned unmatched, implying rookeries abandoned or overrun. The hall fell silent as snowfall. Great John ground out a curse. Stannis looked to Melisandre, who watched the white bird like a rival flame. She lifted a hand, ruby pulsing. "The darkness comes," she said. "Beyond these mortal squabbles lies a night no walls can bar. Azor Ahai reborn must stand against it." Catelyn, wearied by prophecy, asked, "And who is this savior?" Melisandre's eyes moved between Robb and Stannis, as if measuring coals for the hottest spark. "When the sword is tempered, we will know." Davos muttered, "Gods help us if we wait on swords while snows fall." Robb rose, feeling the weight of north and south both on his shoulders. "Then we prepare," he said. "Call banners, secure grain, repair gates. We end petty quarrels or the world ends them for us." His words carried across the chamber, bold. But in his chest fear throbbed like a wound. Fear of White Walkers he had never seen, of Reach and Storm feuds unresolved, of Freys and Boltons lurking, of dragons across the sea, of Melisandre's hungry gods. Leadership meant harnessing fear into purpose. But fear, he knew, could snap chains as easy as forge them. That night, Robb stood again atop the Tower of the Hand, snowflakes swirling luminous under lantern glow. King's Landing's chimneys puffed timid smoke. Beyond, the Tyrell camp glimmered moonlit, a second city of tents. Somewhere north beyond rivers, Theon Greyjoy's betrayal still smoldered, Winterfell's fate unknown. Farther, at the edges of Fable, icy footsteps marched south. Catelyn joined him, cloak drawn. "Your father would be proud," she said softly. Robb's throat tightened. "Would he? I bargain with enemies, break sieges by compromise. Father's honor cut cleaner." "Honor is not a blade," she answered. "It is a torch. Pass it on even if the wind howls. You've done that." They watched snowfall thicken till distant torches blurred like dying stars. In that hush, Robb understood. The war that began with lions and wolves raging over a throne had become something colder, broader. Thrones were chairs, winters were graves. He clasped the parapet, feeling stone ice into bone. Behind them, footsteps. Swift. Unsettling. Arya skidded to halt, eyes wide. "Brother," she breathed, "a ship has docked from Less. They say it sails under a banner with three-headed dragon. A woman with silver hair comes ashore at dawn." Robb and Catelyn exchanged a glance that said everything and answered nothing. Far below, bells began to ring. 3 quick peals, then 5 long. A new signal, not for riot, not for fire. For arrival. The game board of Westeros spun again, and in the blackness between snowflakes and starlight, cold and fire took silent measure of the world they meant to claim. K. The ship that nosed through the black mirror of the Blackwater was no broad-bellied merchant cog, nor one of the sharp proud war galleys still bobbing half-burned at their moorings. It was slender, low-slung, painted midnight blue, so the hull melted into moonlit water, until only a silver prow dolphin announced its passage. No harbor master hailed the vessel. Those on the quays watched instead with a hush more akin to prayer. Sailors muttered that the air itself changed, grew warmer, tasted faintly of distant spices, while ranks of torches guttered in a wind that had not been there the moment before. Robb Stark felt that change atop the Eastwatch parapet of the city walls before any lookout sounded horn. It was as if a breath of some other season brushed his cheek, mocking winter's encroaching chill. The night was quiet otherwise. No criers, no clank of armor training in the square below, no quarrel of dogs. He wondered whether he had imagined it. Until Grey Wind, dozing by his boot, raised his great head and growled at nothing. A lone bell tolled then. 3 low strokes. Pause, 5 high. And the hush shattered. He descended by torchlight, steel ringing as it struck stone in his hurry. Every guard he passed snapping to a salute. The lower courtyard pulsed with confused activity. Davos Seaworth already striding toward the river gate, Maester Gorman flapping in his wake with rolled parchment clutched like armor, Arya trailing on silent feet, despite her mother's hissed command to stay back. Above their heads snowflakes drifted soft as feathers, and each flake seemed to hiss into steam before it reached the stones. At the gate's arch, Stannis stood rigid, jaw clenched, Melisandre half a step behind him. Her red gown looked almost black in moonlight, but the ruby at her throat burned like a banked forge. She said nothing, yet Robb thought he could feel her pulse through the stone. No one spoke until Davos halted before Stannis. "Your Grace," he said quietly. "The harbor watch reports a Lizine cutter, flown under merchant colors, yet its manifest names passengers of royal styling. They claim safe conduct, by ancient Targaryen right." "Then somehow." "Ancient," Stannis repeated, the word a twinge of acid. "And who keeps such rights now?" "Your Grace." Davos said again, but he looked to Robb for half a heartbeat, as though appealing for sense. Robb answered instead. Let them dock. See that the crew disarms, and keep torches ready. He met Stannis' hard stare without flinching. If this is trickery, we'll know soon enough. If not, Stannis cut in. Then dragons tread my realm unbidden. Melisandre's ruby flared. Not unbidden. Foretold. Than to say. They might have argued then, but the river gate chains were rattling. Portcullis winching up. A hush rippled through every soldier crowding the quay, torchlights flickering across uncertain faces. The slender ship eased against the pilings. Lines whisked shoreward. The first figure down the gangway carried no lantern. She needed none. Silver-white hair flowed over a midnight cloak, and though the torchlight danced red, her eyes glimmered a summer sea blue no flame could alter. Daenerys Targaryen touched the dock as one stepping onto old ground remembered only in stories. Two small dragons clung to her shoulders, emerald wings tucked. A larger shape circled overhead, a low thunder of beating air that stirred every banner. Fires reflected in dark reptilian eyes above, and some in the crowd cried out or fell to a knee. Yet the queen's expression was calm, solemn, as though weighed by every knee that might bend. Behind her came a tall knight in white plate chased with gold. Sir Barristan Selmy, who had vanished years before, and a young man with the sharp features of old Volantis, broad shoulders, straining wine-red silk. Two Dothraki bloodriders padded after, braids swinging. Last came Grey Worm and a cluster of unsullied shields polished mirror bright. Not many. Just enough to stand as symbol for the army anchored far offshore, too distant to see but near enough to come when called. She halted 4 paces from the line of city soldiers. The dragons scented winter air. The green one hissed. The black and bronze perked crest frills. Robb felt the heat of them even at distance. For a breath no one moved. Then Robb advanced. He wore no crown tonight, only a wolf's head pin at his throat and a sword at his hip. Grey wind shadowed him, hackles half raised. Snow swirled between them, melting on the Dragon Queen's cloak. Your Grace, he began. Her gaze tracked the wolf before rising to meet his eyes. King in the north, she said, accent lilting on the north. I am. She nodded once. And you are custodian of the Iron Throne. A subtle emphasis. Custodian, not heir. Across the dock, Stannis stepped from the shadows. The throne is mine, he said, iron scraping iron. I claim it by law, and I will not barter it to exiles. Daenerys regarded him, head tilting slightly, as though measuring weight. You are Stannis of House Baratheon, she said. We have heard your claim across the seas. Her gaze flicked to Melisandre's ruby, the dragons clicking in their throats. And the colors you follow. Melisandre answered before Stannis could. The Lord of Light has guided her across the world. Fire answers fire. The crowd hushed anew. Somewhere a horse screamed as though sensing distant predator. A lantern shattered. Robb felt the night tighten, the snow ceased steaming. Every breath a held note on a string. He lifted a hand. Enough. Then to Daenerys. You came under Targaryen right. Speak it. Bassett saw some toss. She drew a scroll from her belt, sealed not with wax but fused gold bearing 3 dragon heads. A bloodrider took 2 steps forward, presented it to Davos, who passed it to Stannis. The parchment crackled. Stannis' lips compressed as he read. Robb could not see words, but he saw the king's knuckles whiten. Stannis lowered the scroll. You invoke Aegon's act of clemency. That statute died with the dragons. Daenerys advanced 1 measured step, dragons dropping wings to balance on her shoulders. The dragons live. The act stands, and Westeros stands at the edge of winter. She turned, addressing the crowd now, voice rising. I claim no right that is not mine by birth, but I come first as ally, not conqueror. A greater night gathers. The dead march. I will lend dragonfire to hold them back, and grain from old giz and ships, and free folk who chose me queen. But I will not kneel to the usurper's line. But I will not kneel to the usurper's line. Her eyes, bright as sword steel, fixed on Stannis. Nor will I leave Westeros to starve beneath bitter principles. The last words struck like axe into oak. A woman in the crowd sobbed. A sellsword shouted, "Dragon Queen!" and was hushed by companions. Stannis opened his mouth and closed it upon Melisandre's light touch on his arm. The priestess spoke instead, soft, carrying. Azor Ahai is reborn amidst salt and smoke, beneath bleeding star. The comet that burned the sky heralded his coming. I saw it. Her gaze lingered on Daenerys's dragons. But perhaps I saw only one scale of a great beast, not the beast itself. She pivoted toward Stannis. Light reveals. Light corrects. Stannis' jaw flexed again. But when he spoke, his voice was measured. Come ashore under truce. We will host you in the Red Keep. I did not cross the narrow sea to lodge in the lion's lair. Daenerys returned. My camp will be set outside the walls. Not one sack. Not one riot. Robb interjected. The field of the cloth of gold lies north of the city. Plenty of ground, no villages to trample. We quarter our own host there. You may join. Supplies will follow. Daenerys studied him. You speak peaceably. Winter teaches manners, he answered. Behind Stannis, Davos exhaled relief, subtle as mist. The torches bobbed. Snow resumed falling. Slower, flakes lingering now, as though the night's strange warmth had fled with tensions easing. Dawn found Robb riding north beyond the dry moat, to where the Tyrell tents still sprawled like a fallen garden. Tyrell foragers, once wary, now hailed the northern king with loaves warm from fresh ovens. Their charity was strategic. Bread today, softer negotiations tomorrow. But men cheered bread nonetheless. Somewhere within the canvas avenues, Joffrey Baratheon screamed oaths at indifferent guards, and Robb wondered how many kings a crownless realm might endure before breaking like rotten ice. Near a ruined windmill stood the new Targaryen camp, marked by 3 tall poles each flying a dragon banner. Unsullied drilled in precise silence, their sandals brushing frost from weed-choked earth. A ring of Dothraki horses stamped steam into the sky, while riders sharpened aracs. In the center, a red and black pavilion rose, seams stitched with what looked like silver thread. Barristan Selmy met Robb at the edge. He bowed with knightly grace despite stiff joints. Her Grace expected you. Inside, brazier heat struck him, scented smoke of myrrh and pine. Daenerys sat cross-legged on a low chair, a small writing board across her knees. A dragon, Emerald, the smallest, dozed curled on a perch by her shoulder. Another clung to the center pole, tail flicking embers from a lantern chain. She dipped quill, finished a line on parchment, and gestured Robb to a stool. He obliged, noting the script. Kiskari glyphs at a glance. Trade manifest? Peace terms? He postponed curiosity. Grain convoys from Old Town arrived at dawn 3 days past, he said. Your ships? They sail under Braavosi charter. She answered. More follow. Your dockmasters may inspect hulls and toss every sack if they please. He inclined head. Your generosity risks your own host. I have fields in New Giais. Spring still warms them. She sealed the parchment, handed it to Missandei. Then she folded her hands and met his gaze anew. Speak plainly. Why do you come? Robb considered honesty. Because winter rides, and because Stannis will not bend. And you? My people follow me only so long as I keep them alive. If dragons and wolves share meat, both live till spring. Her smile was faint. You would lie. I would talk. I have sisters still to protect, a kingdom too, but I make no claim south of the neck. Yet you sit in the Red Keep. Custodian, he reminded, echoing her earlier choice. Once this war ends, I'll gladly leave it. Thrones have never suited Starks. She studied him. Young, but eyes of a man twice conquered by grief. At length she nodded. You would parley 4 kings into peace. Stannis, Tyrells, Targaryen, Stark. And whoever rides from the snow. He thought of Maester Aemon's raven. If we bicker, we give the dead foothold. When they march, no rose or wolf or dragon will matter. She inhaled slow. In Marine, I thought slavery Westeros' worst sin. Then I saw the long night in Quaith's glass, a wave of shadow and ice. I fear your tale is true. She rose, the emerald dragon hopping to her arm. I will treat with Stannis, but not where his shadow woman stands behind him. Ned Shepin. Some fear your dragons more. Then we meet under equal fear. She strode to the pavilion flap. Ride with me at midday. Summon the king. We'll test winter's edge together. Gray wind angled ears as though dubious. Robb bowed and withdrew. Midday's sun broke through shreds of cloud, throwing knife flashes off King's Landing's scorched rooftops. At the field of the cloth of gold, Tyrell pennants, crescent stag banners, deerwolves and dragons all trembled on same breeze. A sight men would recount until memory froze. Stannis arrived first, cloaked in black and gold, lawbringer strapped. Melisandre at his right, Davos at his left. Robb rode opposite, worn wolfskin draped over steel. Great John, Galbart, Catelyn fell in behind. Tyrion limped between ranks of unsullied bearing, neither lion nor wolf. Then Daenerys appeared on silver mare, dragons in tow. Drogon wheeled overhead like living nightfall. Rhaegal and Viserion perched guard. Even battle-scarred veterans swallowed. None spoke until the dragon settled on ruined fountain pedestal. Wings half furled. Daenerys began. I will not war to claim what belongs to me if by peace the realms may be saved. Yet 3 conditions bind me. First, slavery shall find no place in Westeros while I draw breath. Second, my dragons remain mine. No chains, no pits. Third, her gaze speared Stannis. Azor Ahai stands revealed by deeds, not priests. Stannis' face was stone. You claim crown as birthright. I claim by law. The crown cannot seat 2. Robb interjected. The dead crown, none. We form a council, a regency, until winter breaks the long night. 4 houses rule together. Baratheon of Dragonstone, Stark of Winterfell, Tyrell of Highgarden, Targaryen returned. After the threat is ended, the realm decides its king. No. Melisandre hissed through teeth. Blasphemy. One light only can oppose night. Daenerys ignored her. Counsel. And who decides its Lord Protector? Not I, Robb said. Nor Stannis. Nor you. The small folk will trust none they see as conqueror. But Maester Gorman suggests an ancient choice. The High Septon himself as arbiter. Let him bless council decisions, so small folk hear the Seven's voice. Let the Maesters record, and let all lords send envoys to witness. Greyjoy, Martell, Arryn, whether they stand with life or death. Land. Stannis barked short laugh. You place faith in hollow gods and parchment scribes. Then name a better shield, Robb answered. Davos leaned, murmured to Stannis. The king's jaw flexed. Very well. I will sit in council till winter's threat is broken. But he raised a finger. After that, I claim the realm's judgment by law. Great Council of Lords. Votes cast without fear. Daenerys inclined head. I accept. My dragons will not burn cities while council stands. She eyed Melisandre. But they will scorch any treason. The priestess smiled, as though charmed. Robb nodded. We have accord then. Let it be writ. And may the gods of every banner witness. No fanfare shattered the air. Only a long exhale passed through the gathered lines. Somewhere children released birds they'd caught for stew. Sparrows erupted skyward, wheeling between dragon and wolf and rose. Men who expected war tomorrow felt weight lift they did not yet understand. Night fell as ink. Stannis returned to the Red Keep's solar, but Daenerys remained in her pavilion. Parchment spread, tokens marking houses. Robb and Davos joined her, while Unsullied posted watch. The wall, Davos said, fingertip on map's northern edge. We've had no raven in a moon. Scouts claim dead villages along the gift. If wildlings pour south, we need holdfasts manned. I'll send Karstark riders at first light, Robb promised. He looked to Daenerys. And Dragonfire? She hesitated. Drogon alone might burn 10 white hosts, but flight in winter skies is peril. Ice upon wing joints, white wind hides spear throwers. I must gauge storms. Davos frowned. We know little of dragons and snow, yet fire lives within them, a forge heat. She stroked the sleeping Rhaegal. I hope. Robb traced fingers south. Dorne stands aloof. If they close ports, Braavosi grain lingers at sea. Tyrion says persuade Prince Doran via his nephew Trystane, once betrothed to Myrcella. We could trade Myrcella's freedom. And your sister? Davos asked. Sansa chooses her path, Robb said, though heart clenched. She sat with Arya now, reading tales by candle. She will not be hostage again. Another voice cut from door. Nor must any girl be coin. It was Lady Olenna, entering without escort. The old woman regarded the table, sniffed. Move your trinkets. This council needs tea cakes and clearer heads. No one argued. She laid a basket down. Warm pastry scent, swallowed gloom. Daenerys accepted one with smile. Robb likewise. Davos chuckled despite fatigue. Olenna took up the silver Tyrell rose she'd worn at Renly's camp, set it upon map over King's Landing. Child kings bring realm to ruin. You propose 4 guardians? Fine, dirty white. But choose a woman for each if you desire balance. Men reach for swords when pens suffice. Divorcee. Robb chewed, found no rebuttal. Daenerys laughed softly. Agreed. Lady Olenna for Highgarden, Princess Asha Greyjoy for Pike, if she can be persuaded by ships and trade. Theon's crimes notwithstanding, and Doran's Ilaria Sand sits for Sunspear regardless of bastardy. That leaves Vale. Jon Royce, Robb suggested. His stones are iron but ears half granite. Olenna sniffed. Yet better than the boy behind him. Done. They set names, sealed parchment. Beyond tent. Snow thickened. Flakes muted by dragon heat radiating from canvas. The night felt hushed, but not bleak. A breath drawn before wide tasks. Robb stood to leave. As he lifted the flap, Daenerys spoke behind him. King in the north. He faced her. She rose, irises catching brazier flame. You said thrones ill fit Starks. Yet you sit one, if only till spring. I sit because someone must, he said, and I'd rather it be a reluctant man than an eager monster. She nodded. Then perhaps we are alike. She extended a hand. He clasped it. Fire and frost meeting, the Dragon Queen's skin warm as heated metal, his gloved hand chill beneath fur. For a heartbeat, every color in the world seemed to balance on that grasp. Gray wind rumbled low, neither threat nor complaint, and Rhaegal answered with a soft whistle. Snow deepened over following fortnight, burying siege rubble, softening city scars. Carpenters patched roofs, maesters brewed potions against chill, and markets reopened under watch of mixed patrols, unsullied, Northmen, Stormlanders, Tyrell sergeants. Tensions flared but steel stayed sheathed. Common hunger for survival eclipsed old grudges. In council chamber of Aegon's Hill, the new regency assembled. Stannis, Robb, Daenerys, Lady Olenna, Tyrion as record keeper, Davos representing common voice, Jon Royce newly arrived with Vale Falcons, Ilaria Sand for Dorne, Asha Greyjoy rode upriver in a frost-rimmed Drummond to speak for Iron Isles. 11 voices, 10 armies, not counting dead, and 1 empty seat at table head reserved for the High Septon, still days away trudging through storm. Their first decree freed bread distribution to any who queued, not merely those with copper to pay. The second outlawed forced recruitment of smallfolk by any lord without council assent. The third commanded ravens to every holdfast. Ride north, hold the wall. Some answers came swift. Karstarks pledged 2,000, Mormonts 400 spear wives. Others were silence. The twins, the Dreadfort, Casterly Rock now under Kevin Lannister's uncertain stewardship. On the 8th day, a raven from White Harbor brought worse news. The sea froze glass hard beyond Skagos, and wraith shapes prowled midnight shoreline. Lord Wyman pleaded for dragonfire. Daenerys arranged Drogon's departure within hours. Robb accompanied her to the outer yard, where the black beast crouched like living charred ruin. Snow melted inches from its belly. Twin plumes of smoke curled from nostrils. She mounted with agile grace. No saddle. Robb stepped near enough heat baked his cheeks. "Bring him home safe," he said, unsure whether meant to Drogon or her. She smiled. "I mean to bring home more than dragons. Hope, if it survives the cold." She squeezed knees. Wings unfurled with thunderclap. Snow swirled into vortex as Drogon leapt, tail smashing air, ascending like night torn open. Robb watched until the pair shrank to black moat against blanched cloud. Arya stood beside him then. He had not heard her come. "Shall come back," she said, eyes tracking Dragon until lost. "Dragons always choose where to fly." He rested hand on her shoulder. "And wolves?" "They follow pack," she answered, voice small but fierce. He remembered father's words. His heart ached but warmed. Weeks marched. Letters flew. Winter settled claws. Council sessions stretched into candlelit vigils over maps of northern marches. White pins for castles, black for losses. From the wall, silence persisted. Rangers sent south failed to return. Rumors spoke of Hardhome burning under greenish-blue flame, of giants roving beyond Frostfangs. Then one dawn, a horn blast from ramparts signaled returning flyers. Robb rushed out expecting dragon wings. Found none. Instead, a line of riders bearing white flag banners cantered through blowing snow. The lead wore cracked plate-painted flayed man. A Bolton. He dismounted before Robb, Stannis, Tyrion. Gray wind bared teeth. The man unrolled blood-spattered skin parchment. Message from Dreadfort Wat. Roose Bolton pledged fealty to the Regency, offering 10,000 spears for the wall, so long as Council recognized his son Ramsay's claim to Winterfell's stewardship, until a Stark ruled there again. North of the Neck in winter, roads impassable. Some Karstark lords had bent to Bolton. It was not offer so much as threat. Robb's pulse hammered. Memories of Winterfell burning, Bran and Rickon chased, came roaring. He told Bolton's man to wait outside. Then he faced the council. Tyrion broke silence first. "We need those men." Stannis scoffed. "Bolton flays his enemies. Accept his help, and he flays your soul." Olenna chimed. "Monsters make convenient pets until they gnaw through leash." Elaria Sand leaned forward. "But if we refuse, walls fall. Dead pour south." All eyes turned to Robb. His vision blurred. Snow wraiths, father's severed head, Ramsay's cackling face described by traumatized septons. He swallowed salt. "No," he said. "Bolton murdered guests under his roof. He is no true lord. We hold the wall with others, or die." Stannis nodded approval. Asha Greyjoy shrugged like gamble accepted. Jon Royce grunted respect. Tyrion merely sighed, quill scratching. They sent Bolton's envoy back. Flayed man banner folded. That night the man was found hanging beneath a parapet, throat cut ear to ear. No one claimed deed. Gray wind prowled restless. City torches flickered unease. December's heart arrived, a night of wailing winds so cold lamp oil congealed. Robb stood watch by northern gate. Snow knee-deep even on battlement when first refugees appeared. A column of wildlings and black brothers, nearly indistinguishable beneath rags of fur and frostbite. Among them, a towering figure carried by 6 men. Tormund Giantsbane, chest torn by claw wounds, turned gray. Maester Gorman raced. Fires built. One black brother, a boy scarcely older than Arya, was coherent enough to speak. The dead took Eastwatch, marching 12 abreast, giants now whites. Jon Snow, Lord Commander, had gone missing on a ranging beyond the Frostfangs a fortnight earlier. He pressed a wooden token into Robb's palm, a disc of weirwood carved with direwolf over sword. "If you're his kin," he croaked, he said, "give this." Robb's throat closed. He clenched token until edges bit. The lad died that night. Tormund lingered long enough to mutter of white spiders big as hounds, blue-eyed bears, of horns so deep the sky shook. He died at sunrise. Robb gathered counsel. He laid token before them. Voice raw. My brother lives or falls out there. We ride. Stannis answered first. Then I ride with you. Olenna raised eyebrows. You'll leave capital ungarrisoned. Council rules, Stannis replied. I hold sword. Daenerys had not yet returned. But her unsullied commander Grey Worm pledged 2,000 to garrison city with Tyrell meant. Asha would blockade Blackwater mouth with longships. Illyria trained crossbowmen on walls. In fortnight more, a combined host marched north. Stark spears hardened by siege. Stormlanders grim and curt. Knights of the Reach eager for Frosttail glory. Unsullied stoic. Dothraki uncertain atop shag-coated mares. Drogon returned mid-March, Daenerys astride, scales raked, but eyes bright. She brought White Harbor's Wyman alive. The city's safe for now. But Skagos lost. She joined war column without pause. They crossed the Trident on floating pontoon laid by Tyrell engineers. River ice tore at hulls but held. They passed ravaged towns where white raids had struck, fields trampled flat by hordes, barn doors charred by dragonfire in Daenerys' absence. Refugees clung to wagon trains, their bodies draped in blankets issued by council. Some bent knee to Robb, others to Stannis or the Dragon Queen. Most simply wept, grateful for any crest. Each night the aurora flared green in north sky, reflections glinting off Drogon's onyx hide. Scouts rode on dead horses captured from whites, lugging back broken spears white with frost. At Moat Cailin, horns announced unexpected banners. Mormonts in crescent shields, Glover men, even some Umbers who'd marched by secret tracks. Maid Mormont clasped Robb's forearm hard. Thought we'd miss the waltz? Not while Bear still breathes. She did not ask about Winterfell. Truth lay in her eyes. Burned but alive. The host pressed over causeway, slogging through sleet. Wolves followed at distance, drawn by gray wind's calls. A pack of grays and whites, lean but fierce. Dothraki whispered fear of these spirits, but none dared kill them. Even dragons left them be. Then came Winterfell's blasted shells, towers blackened from Bolton's torch yet walls still strong. A cry rose from northern throats at sight, rage, mourning, purpose. They stopped only long enough to bury the dead from earlier fight and dig caches of turnips and salt pork from cellars forgotten by Boltons. Catelyn walked ramparts alone that night, tears freezing on cheeks. Robb joined, laid a hand on her shoulder. She whispered, "Your father would whoop with pride." He smiled brokenly. They pushed north. The sky turned pale steel. Wolves howled at midday. Wind screamed at dusk. They met first white outrider near Long Lake, an eyeless man on elk skeleton, arrows protruding. Gray wind tore it down before men rallied. Fire-consumed remains, smoke blew south across snow. From there, every league cost blood. Whites lay buried beneath drifts, giants swung tree trunks. Snow bears with glowing eyes tore tents in the night. Dragons burned swathes, but fuel for fire dwindled. Men murmured prayer to every god. Finally they sighted the wall, a jagged white cliff cracked by fissures like black lightning. East Watchtower was gone, only rubble caked in ice. Columns of dead marched beyond, shapes small but countless. Atop a central rise rode armored figure on pale horse, King of Winter, eyes blue suns. When Drogon wheeled overhead, he lifted an icy spear, and wind seemed to hush. Daenerys hovered high, calculating. Robb, Stannis, Davos, Daenerys gathered in wind-whipped hollow behind ridge. Snow stung like hornets. Robb unrolled battered map at dot. "We strike first light," Stannis said. "Rangers flank, dragons burn spearhead." Davos shook his head. "Burn all day, night comes, dead rise anew. We kill the walkers, the whites fall." "Where's Jon?" Robb whispered. "He knows their ways." No one answered. Daenerys' gaze drifted up to Drogon circling. Dragon glass, fire and glass. Stannis produced pouch. Obsidian daggers forged by dragonstone smiths. Enough for each captain. Robb sheathed one at belt. Then, break the army's spine. He looked at Daenerys. Can Drogon carry two? She nodded. Then fly me over their walker. No, Stannis said. Every king's death splits our line. Robb faced him. If Walker lives, every line splits anyway. Daenerys spoke. He rides with me. Drogon chooses his riders. At dawn, sky cracked rose gold behind roiling snow cloud. The host formed wedges. Drogon landed, steam billowing. Robb mounted behind Daenerys, gray wind baying below. Stannis lifted sword high. Melisandre's chant carried thin on gale. Horns blew, deep as glacier groan. Soldiers advanced into white. Whites met shield walls with bone-shattering fury. Obsidian blades flared blue upon contact, Walker lieutenants shattering into ice dust. Tyrell knights skewered dead giants until dragonfire consumed both friend and foe. Unsullied held phalanx around maesters tending flame arrows. Dothraki screamed death songs until silence answered. Above, Drogon climbed, wings beating thunder. Robb's heart pounded in sync with dragons. The Walker King turned his spear skyward. Frost spiraled. Drogon roared defiance, flames streaming. Spear hurtled, Daenerys veered. Shaft scraped scale. Word past Robb's ear plunged into snow behind lines, ice spiking on impact. Another Walker raised hand. Robb hurled obsidian dagger downward. Blade struck its collar, burst in black shards. Walker collapsed. White's nearest drooped lifeless. Drogon dove. Fire-washing Walker cavalry. Robb spotted the king, alone now, raising both arms. Corpses surged up a new avalanche of limbs. Robb yelled, "The spear he draws, cut him off!" Daenerys banked. Robb seized spare obsidian spear from harness. Dragons swooped low. Robb flung. Spear struck king's chest. For heartbeat nothing, then fractures webbed ice armor. Blue light within flickered, dimmed. King burst like glass hammer, shards whirling in blizzard. Whites froze mid-strike, limbs falling slack. Silence blossomed wider than sky. Snow drifted, ash quiet. Drogon landed amid field of stillness. Men stared in wonder, weapons lowering one by one. Robb slid to ground, knees buckling. Gray wind bounded, muzzle licking frost from his hand. Stannis approached, helm off. No words, only nod. Respect, grief, relief. Daenerys knelt by shattered shards. They melted into water that steamed and vanished. Her dragons keened overhead. A mourning or a triumph? The long night had not ended. Other walkers might remain far iceward. But the army that threatened realm lay broken, and the men who broke it stood beneath swirling gray sky. Dragons and wolves, breathing the same breath. Months later, spring sunlight speared fresh leaves on Blackwater Heath. Scaffolds covered Red Keep, rebuilding after siege and storm. In the Godswood courtyard transplanted from Winterfell cuttings, 4 thrones none, plain chairs carved from weirwood root and oak, waited for counsel. Robb Stark entered first, gray wind at heel. Daenerys followed, silver hair glinting. Stannis, leaner but alive, came last with Davos. Lady Olenna absent in garden tended by maesters, yet her steward placed Tyrell rose on table edge. The High Septon, white beard bright, addressed assembly. "The realm thanks you. Now must decide crown." Robb stood. "I withdraw claims south of Neck." Stannis began. But Daenerys raised hand. "And I withdraw until realm chooses freely." She looked at Stannis. "Let law decide." Stannis exhaled. "If realm chooses you, then I rule with counsel," she said. "Fire tempered by ice." He nodded once. "And if it chooses me? Then I return to Dragonstone and guard coasts. Dragons owe Westeros their births, not its chains." Robb smiled faintly. "Then we leave matter to lords." The Septon inclined head. "So be it. A great council will meet come midsummer." He lifted parchment. "Until then, regency continues." Davos murmured relief. Tyrion scribbled. Asha cracked knuckles. Elaria smirked. Outside, children chased butterflies along newly planted hedges. A boy tossed apple core to passing direwolf. Gray wind crunched happily. On horizon, sails filled harbor. Braavosi grain now free of tariffs. Dornish wine, Volantine spices. A summer market rising from war's ruin. Robb glanced at Daenerys. She stood with sunlight turning her hair gold, eyes on Bell Tower where white ravens perched, sentinels of seasons. She felt his gaze, met it. For a heartbeat, he saw all, dragons soaring over flowering fields, wolves guarding halls rebuilt, free folk living unchained, long night banished. Not certainty, but possibility. He offered his arm. She rested her hand lightly, fire's warmth meeting northern cool. Together they stepped into the courtyard bustle, where masons sang of walls and children laughed at shadows that no longer walked. Far-off bells rang noon, bright as hope on new forged steel. And above them, circling lazily in warm updrafts, 3 dragons traced spirals in a sky no longer torn by smoke. A sky wide open to stories yet unwritten, birthing winds that carried both scent of pine and salt of the distant sea, promising that at last, the song of ice and fire had found harmony enough to greet a dawn unmarred by darkness. Moat Cailin. Narrow green chutes pushed through the mud where a charred trebuchet once stood, and the air on Aegon's high hill carried a scent new to King's Landing. Wet loam, pine resin, crushed clover. Spring had taken root at last. The city walls still bore scorches from dragonfire, and dents from Stormlander rams, but stone masons and carpenters moved like ants over every breach, chanting work songs that mingled with the cries of gulls wheeling off the river. A chorus of hammers and saws replaced the clanging of blades. Banners snapped in a gentler breeze. Even the Red Keep's shadow fell softer, for scaffolds obscured half its blood-streaked ramparts beneath fresh-cut timber and pale mortar. Robb Stark walked the rampart walk above the repaired King's Gate, gray wind trotting at his heel, muzzle flecked with early bloom petals, snagged from garden plots sprouting where the old Bailey gardens had burned. Below, small folk queued for barley loaves rationed by the Regency, each citizen marked with a charcoal direwolf or stag or rose on the sleeve to show which quarter they hailed from, a device Tyrion had devised to track distribution without stirring old loyalties. For once the queue advanced with no shoving, no knives palmed. Months of steady bread had cooled even the hungriest fire of resentment. On the far side of the square, an unsullied file passed a patrol of Tyrell billmen. The 2 columns exchanged curt nods and carried on. A mundane miracle that would have seemed impossible before the white raven of winter. From the parapet, Robb could see the new temple roof rising beside the scorched shell of Baelor's sept. A low wooden hall shaped in northern style, curved slate shingles catching sunlight. The septon had blessed its foundation. The red priests had acknowledged the fire pit at its center, and a sapling weirwood transplanted from Crackclaw's haunted groves bent gracefully over the entry. When the High Septon arrived for Midsummer's great council, the hall would host joint prayers for the dead of every faith. Robb liked the idea of ghosts laid side by side, even if only in memory. It felt like fitting tribute to Cathan, Palla, and all the nameless lost at Sow's Horn and the Wall. Footsteps echoed behind him. Arya emerged from the tower stair, hair now braided in 2 thick plaits as Sansa had coaxed after a dozen arguments. She wore a doublet of dark blue leather too fine for her taste, but a plain sword belt cinched it, needle clattering against the hilt of a Braavosi stiletto she'd taken from a Braavosi envoy who had overstepped compliments. Her boots were dusted with sawdust and flour. "They're ready," she said. Robb nodded, one hand resting on Grey Wind's ruff. "Any sign of Stannis?" Scowling near the new sept, arguing with the High Septon steward. Her eyes rolled. "If he scowls any harder, the godswood might catch fire." "Fire we can douse," Robb said. "Stannis, we only redirect." They descended to the courtyard where horses stamped in half-settled straw. Catelyn waited there, wrapped in a wolf pelt cloak, despite the warming air. Streaks of white threaded her red hair now, but her bearing was straight. Beside her stood Lady Olenna in a plum gown trimmed with gold seedlings, leaning on that ever-present cane as though she would brain anyone who forgot she needed it. Asha Greyjoy lounged on the fountain ledge, tossing a coin that looked suspiciously Lannister in make. The rest of the regents arrayed themselves in a semicircle. Jan Royce in his dull iron falcon helm, Illyria Sand in sand-silk of burnished copper, Davos Seaworth with salt in his beard and parchment in his fist, and Tyrion, that permanent quill-wielding shadow, jotting amendments to the day's itinerary. Across the yard, Stannis approached with Davos Sundale and a pair of Dragonstone knights. Melisandre trailed 4 paces back, her red silks curiously muted beneath a gray cloak. She wore no smile, but neither did her ruby pulse. For half a moon she had been quiet. Robb wondered whether her god had withdrawn its heat after the fall of the Walker King, or whether the priestess could taste new shapes moving in the flames beyond any mortal design. "Counsel," Stannis announced by way of greeting. "Where is the queen with her beasts?" As if summoned, a gust rumbled against the stable roofs. Drogon swept overhead, broad as a warship's mainsail, and twice as loud. His shadow blotted the yard while his siblings corkscrewed in his wake. Wind peeled linen from clotheslines and set any fresh thatch trembling. Robb braced against the backblast. When the dragons banked south along the river, their rider guided them with a single tilt of the spear she carried. Daenerys landed in the open paddock beyond the wall, dismounted, walked the 100 yards through dust with 2 unsullied escorts and Missandei, parchment folder in hand. Ser Barristan remained by the dragons, gauntleted fist on sword pommel, pale cloak rippling like an old banner still proud of its color. Robb felt a pang. The man reminded him of his father. Honor so ingrained it bent the spine and made every failure ring louder. Daenerys joined the circle and exchanged bows with Catelyn and Olenna. Grey Wind trotted forward, nose twitching curiosity at her scent of smoke and foreign spices. The queen laid her palm on the direwolf's head, unflinching when his yellow eyes inspected hers. "He carries wildfire and snow both," she said. "As does his master," Olenna quipped. "Imagine the bedding linens." Davos cleared his throat. "Shall we?" He handed Robb the parchment. "The Great Council escort leaves at midday. Our route skirts the newly dredged Roserad. All levies along the way have been instructed to pledge no swords, only safe hearth for the Septon's retinue." "No." Robb glanced over the list. 200 unsullied, 100 Tyrell knights, 50 northern outriders under Galbart Glover, 50 Stormlanders from Estermont, and 40 crossbowmen personally selected by Tyrion from among loyal gold cloaks who'd survived the siege and the riots. Beside each unit, Davos had inked the day's march distance and the nearest granary pit, stocked by Tyrell barges. Olenna's subtle assurance that breadlines would not falter while the capital emptied of its highest worth. "And our realm guests?" Robb asked. Tyrion tapped his quill. "The Dornish caravan reached Bitterbridge yesterday, escorted by Prince Trystane and Lady Namella Tolan. The Vale contingent is still delayed at the Bronze Gate." Lord Belmore broke a wheel. "But Jon insists they'll arrive in time for the council." "The Iron Isles?" "Well, Lady Asha will clarify." "Banantrim?" The Kraken princess flicked her borrowed coin into the air, caught it on the back of her wrist. "My uncle Euron has not responded to ravens. He's busy wallowing in storms and madness. But I brought ships enough to hold the gullet until we know his course." Olenna sniffed. "If the Kraken slithers anywhere near our shores, your ships best be more than enough." "They smell of pitch and blood, grandmother," Asha answered sweetly. "He'll recognize kinship and keep his distance." Stannis' scowl deepened. "Jesting will not mend the world." Lady Olenna lifted her cane. "Nor will grimaces, yet here we stand." Robb stepped between them. "The escort leaves within the hour. Let's ride before tempers outrun hooves." The procession uncoiled from the city like a banner of many threads. Unsullied spears, shimmering pewter, rose-green horsehair plumes, wolf banners patched but proud, black and silver Baratheon racks stitched over dragonstone crimson. The High Septon's white litter, carved with 7-point starbursts and drawn by 6 placid oxen, anchored the center. With him rode his scribes and acolytes, their quills bristling like straw from baskets of vellum. Davos piloted the vanguard, while Robb and Daenerys shared the column's heart, his direwolf lounging between their mounts enough to deter any overeager knight from parading close. On the third day, they entered countryside once ravaged by war. Now the fields shimmered with gold barley. Tyrell farmers had arrived in wagon trains, gifting seed in exchange for shares come harvest. The small folk lined the route, wives hoisting toddlers, old men tipping caps, girls weaving garlands from the first meadow blooms. Many still bore the charcoal sleeve marks, but some had repurposed them into decorative badges. Wolf eyes picked out in stitched blue glass beads, stag antlers fashioned from willow wands. The council soldiers tossed coin and hardtack. Poor jokes flew back. Children laughed without ducking for arrows. At night they camped in old army's footprints, now soft with grass, yet caution lingered. Pickets doubled when word reached them that a cadre of Bolton spearwives had burned 2 outrider huts near the Stony Sept. Stannis wanted to dispatch a hunt, but Robb argued for swift arrival at Harrenhal. Their strength lay in presenting unified rule, not fracturing to swat every nettle. Melisandre, consulted late, simply murmured, "Ice breaks where eyes look away," an omen vague enough to please no one. Dusk of the 5th day found them approaching Harrenhal. The fortress loomed, all black fingers clawing at a sky-streaked orange by dying sun. One could still smell the tang of Aegon's ancient fire fused with swamp miasma. Yet Tyrell masons had erected pale banners within the shattered yards, dais platforms ringed with lumber stands for each delegation, a riot of color overlay and char. 2 dragons perched on the broken tower spine, Viserion and Rhaegal, tails twining, eyes half-hooded like temple idols. Scaffolds allowed them to launch without smashing roofs. The Reach carpenters had started calling the tower Drakespire, which amused Daenerys to no end. Tyrion greeted the escort on the drawbridge. He wore a doublet of gray velvet that erased any hint of lion red, but a narrow chain of gold gleamed at his throat, a reminder no quill could fully scratch out lineage. "I trust the journey lacked insurrection?" he asked Robb. "Only good grain and better jests. May the lords inside match both." They've been choking on protocol since dawn. Inside the courtyard, rows of benches faced the high platform where 7 seats awaited, flanked by lower stools. Oil braziers guttered, scent of pine pitched sharp dot. Heralds huddled near the dais, ready to trumpet each arrival. Scribes scuttled at their heels. Across the yard, Lady Olenna conferred with Duke Meadows, Prince Trystane, and Jan Royce, gesturing at seating charts like a general deploying siege towers. The High Septon shuffled forward beneath silk canopies and offered blessing in a voice thick with road dust. His words echoed between cracked stone halls. "May peace rest where dragons first fell." No thunderclap accompanied, yet even robins in arrow slits quieted. The first lord to kneel and pledge obedience to council authority was Hoster Serret of Silverhill. The second, Paxter Redwine, who insisted on full treatises of shipping entitlements before releasing captains to the council's supply fleet. By sunset of the 6th day, over half the realm's major houses had signed provisional fealty. Velaryon, Ryger, Celtigar, Estermont, Piper, and Marbrand among them. The rest negotiated minor clauses, tax caps, reparations, marriage wards, but 2 banners remained ominously absent from the lists: Frey and Bolton. On the 7th dawn, thunder rolled from the west. A column of riders in livery blue and gray galloped to Harrenhal's gate. They bore no flayed man, no wolf. Instead, 2 great doors carved from the fretted weirwood of the twins had been strapped to poles. On one side hung Walder Frey's corpse, face slate blue, throat ringed purple. On the other, Walder Rivers and Black Walder pierced to rigid boards by quarrels. A parchment writ fluttered beneath Lord Frey's gray beard. "The river passes to clean waters." The riders, Tully men returned from exile, claimed Edmure's loyalists had seized the twins in night assault, aided by sons of the late Lord Hoster, and a contingent of unknown northern saboteurs, whose leader wore a half-mask of weirwood. As proof they carried a box containing the severed hand of Ramsay Bolton, ring still on finger. Ice crystals glistened on knuckles. The rider confessed to dispatching the rest of Ramsay's corpse into the trident with stones tied, so it would feed on its own rot. The Dreadfort's banner had not yet fallen. but its terror-wielding air was gone. A murmur stormed the great hall. Stannis' eyes narrowed. Whether at rebellion or poetic justice, Robb could not tell. Lady Olenna simply twirled her cane and smiled. The High Septon prayed for Walder's soul. Hilaria observed, ash for ash. No envoy from the Dreadfort appeared. Council called recess for contemplation. Robb paced the antechamber with Arya, anger seething. Someone took justice into their own hands, he said. Arya's lips thinned. Sometimes justice needs quick hands. Hand can steady or spill. She glanced sideways. Which am I? My sister, he said, steady enough to hold a kingdom's heart if it falters. Her cheeks colored at that, but she said no more. The great council convened under a noon sun pale as old linen. 7 regent thrones faced the mass of lesser seats, where over 200 lords and ladies sat according to region. Daenerys wore black scaled silk and simple silver circlet. Robb, a gray doublet with weirwood clasp that Davos joked weighed heavier than a crown. Stannis donned battered plate, polished mirror bright. No crown at all. Olenna had insisted the formal votes occur without regents addressing the floor first. Let allegiances speak before persuasion stepped in, she argued. But the High Septon opened with prayer for unity. Then parchment scrolls passed down rows. Each lord inscribed a name, sealed in wax of house color. 4 copper urns waited atop the dais. Dragon, stag, rose, wolf. Voting hours stretched while scribes compiled tallies. The hall buzzed in anticipation. Rumors darted between pillars. Tyrell knights whispering Robb and Rose coalition. Westerland's lesser lords muttering the throne should go to Kevin Lannister, but he had refused. At dusk the High Septon rose. A hush cascaded. By will of lords great and small, by voice of realms now whole, I proclaim. The urn of the dragon contained 72 seals. The urn of the stag, 89. The urn of the wolf, 73. The urn of the rose, 21 tarde. Gasps and cries rippled. Stannis by 16 votes. But procedure demanded second round, limited to top 2. Dragon versus stag. A quiver of tension strummed Robb's back. He caught Daenerys' expression, serene, unflinching. But beneath that calm, sadness coiled like a silent question. Lady Olenna barked to stewards. Round 2 before these bones chill. Scrolls circulated again. This time each lord wrote only one name, wax dripped quickly as torch resin. When the tallies reached the dais, an hour later, gloom slanted across stained glass shards high in the ruined vault, painting regents in bruised color like harbingers of dusk. The High Septon read again, stag urn, 94, dragon, 91 darta. A stifled roar from Stormlanders, murmured frustration among Tully benches. A ripple of respectful bows from Tyrell tables. Daenerys exhaled, gaze slipping north to where her dragons perched. Gray wind whined, bumping Robb's leg as though to urge speech. But ceremony dictated Stannis step forward first. He did. Helm tucked beneath arm, black hair blowing. The hall braced for stern gratitude. Instead, he cleared his throat. Lords of Westeros, he said, voice grating, you grant me crown that by law I sought. Yet you saw fit to weigh me nearly even with a queen whose dragons saved our wall, and whose mercy fed your fields. I accept your choice. Some Stormlander cheers erupted. Yet I will not rule alone. He turned to Daenerys, and a hush colder than winter dew fell. You spoke of council governance until realm heals. That council shall endure as equal partner to the crown. Its seats permanent and renewed by great councils every 5 years. And you, Queen Daenerys Stormborn, shall be named Hand of the King, with full dragon right to act where I cannot. Murmurs surged. Melisandre's eyes glowed, but her lips moved in silent prayer. Stannis shifted to Robb. And you? Lord Robb Stark, King in the North by ancient vote, shall remain Warden of Northern Marches and Protector of the Wall, freed by charter to rule north of the Neck, as near sovereigns save in matters of coin and war. The crown will not meddle in Winterfell's harvest, and no southern levy shall march north without your leave. Robb's heart hammered. He glimpsed Catelyn's eyes shining. Arya grinned wild wolfish relief. Great John roared approval so loud owls fled the rafters. Stannis faced lords again. This I declare not as overture but decree. Council tempering crown, blades answering wall. Dragons guarding sky. Law endures when men share its weight. He drew his sword, Lightbringer at last, reforged from the broken weapons of the Walker lieutenants, its edge gleaming faint red where black glass veins ran through steel. He raised it high. Flame licked along fuller and quiet tongues, then died, leaving only glow. I will carry this burden but not alone. Robb stepped to Daenerys. He bowed. She returned the gesture. Olenna tapped her cane sharply and called for acclamation. The hall erupted in a thunder of staffs on stone, cheers and sobs. Tyrion, wiping an eye, muttered to Davos, "I shall need a new title on my ledgers, Scribe of Miracles." Outside, Rhaegal trumpeted skyward. Viserion answered. Drogon, who had remained aloof on Far Tower, released a gout of flame that blistered the twilight clouds in gold. Bells across the camp rang. The new queen's spears struck shields in salute. Stormlanders raised antlers of green bronze. Northern outriders filled the air with direwolf calls. Beyond the walls, the trident's dark length glittered beneath first stars. That night, in the broken feast hall of Harrenhal, they held a banquet unlike any since Aegon's conquest. Bolstered grain stores and Tyrell wines flowed. Dothraki devised a dance with ash torches that spiraled under the moon-bruised vault. Asha Greyjoy wagered Ed Tollett the last cask of arbor gold that she could outdrink any man at table. She won and still walked a line back to her pallet. Jon Royce debated armor alloy with unsullied smiths. Arya taught Prince Trystane the steps to a Winterfell harvest reel, feet stomping despite the rubble. Melisandre stood apart, eyes fixed on brazier shadows. A faint upturn at her mouth suggested Fire's verdict had not condemned this kingdom's choice. Robb slipped onto the parapet sometime past midnight, the hall's din muffled by distance. Snow had vanished, leaving wet stone smelling of iron and earth. He leaned on a shattered merlon, breathing night air laced with roasting boar. Footsteps approached, Daenerys within arm's reach, silver hair unbound, circlet gone. "So," she said quietly, "hand of the king." Robb chuckled. "A heavier shackle than any crown. Yet we both escaped crowns." She glanced at him sidelong. "Do you regret?" "Crowns crush. I'll wear a fur cap and see winter through, thanks." She hummed agreement. Below them, the new High Septon guided orphans to warm pallets near kitchens. Grey wind nosed among them, accepting scraps. Drogon perched on tower cusp, outlined by half-moon glare. Far off, dawn's faintest pallor eased the horizon, promising another long day, and more years of them, if they steered the ship of realm between rocks. Daenerys looked north. "Morning star," she whispered. Robb followed her gaze. A bright pinprick pierced fading night, steady as a promise. "Old Nan called it the wolf's eye," he said. She said, "Whenever it shines before dawn, change follows. Let it be kinder change," Daenerys murmured. She offered him her hand. Not for treaty, not for leverage. Simply offered. He placed his hand over hers. The path ahead unspooling like frost, melting beneath new sun. In silence they watched first light creep over naked stones that once bathed in dragonfire, and now awaited new mortar. Bells began in slow toll, gathering tempo. Wolves howled response, and somewhere in the corridors below, a smith's hammer struck iron for dawn forging. The sound rang sure, measured, building. A kingdom's heartbeat. Okay. The pink of first light had only just blushed across the Ironford hills, when the raven landed on the sill of the temporary council chamber at Harrenhal. Its claws scraped a restless pattern across a table already smothered in parchment, ink pots, and flagons of wine left open from half the night before. Tyrion Lannister blinked from a tangle of quills and rubbed sleep grit from his eyes. He had drifted off in the middle of transcribing the final version of the Regency's proclamations. A triumph of compromises that made as many enemies as friends. The Raven's arrival felt like the next inevitable volley in a game that had ceased to pause, even for Dawn. He cracked the seal with stiff fingers. Snow flurries drifted past the opening, though it was deep spring by the southern calendar. He read the note twice before its full weight settled. The dead did not march, but neither were they wholly vanquished. Hundreds of whites had splintered from the shattered army beyond the wall, and now roamed the high passes of the Frostfangs in small feral packs. Rangers reported a shape moving among them, something like a child of ice, smaller than the king they had slain but equally cold inside. The scouts had nicknamed it the Shardling. More urgently, the message continued. Jon Snow had not been seen since the night Robb Stark and the Dragon Queen breached the army's spine. There were tracks, some human, some monstrous, leading toward the jagged spearheads of Skirling Pass and then vanishing under a new sheet of snow. Tyrion sighed. Lost sons, he muttered to the raven, who snapped at a leftover rind of hard cheese. There is always another son to lose, another past to bleed in. He put quill to fresh parchment, drafting a summary to present to the council. Once half-rested dignitaries could be collected from whatever alcove or featherbed they'd found. He would recommend reinforcing the Night's Watch with the first levies from the Stormlands, good spear lines tested under Stannis, and sending a flight of ravens to Bravos for additional grain shipments to White Harbor. Winter might be easing in the south, but north of the Neck it still clenched the land in an icy grip. Before Tyrion finished, the great hall's door banged wide, and Arya Stark stormed in, face pale but determined, snow still melting on Brave. "The new riders are in," she said, breath clouding. "I saw the letters. Joan's out there. I'm going." "Going where?" Tyrion asked. "Surely not the Frostfangs for a mid-spring picnic." "Past Skirling Pass," she answered. "Joan's alive. I feel it. The council can deliberate all it likes, but I'm taking a party north now. Does your brother know that?" "He will," she said, and was gone before Tyrion could summon arguments about patience, supply lines, or diplomacy. Robb Stark found Arya saddling a rangy bay in the torchlit courtyard, 3 stout northern outriders already on horseback by the gate. He felt pride and dread mixing like oil and water. "You never did wait for permission," he said. "Sanction slows things that can't wait," she answered, tightening the cinch. "Jon needs us. We have an army's worth of tasks." "The army can march behind," Arya said, throwing the pack across the saddle. "We only need to keep ahead of the dead by a day. A fast vanguard can find him before whites close every pass." "You sound like Greatjon," Robb muttered. He looked past her to Grey Wind, who paced the yard with tail high, excited by the idea of a hunt. "Mother will skin us both, if she can catch me." Robb weighed every memory of Jon. Shared lessons in the Winterfell yard, Jon's half-smile after winning his first bout, his face proud when presented with Longclaw. He imagined that face now lost in snow, and decided. He gestured to the outriders. "Take 8 more from Glover's scouts. I'll ride overland to Winterfell, gather supplies and a true company of archers, meet you before Skirling." His gaze hardened. "But you wait on me at the crag above the Bridge of Skulls. No heroics until reinforcements arrive." Arya started to argue, saw his eyes, and inclined her head. "Bridge of Skulls," she promised. "But no slower than 3 days." They clasped forearms, siblings, but commanders too. Strength passed between them, like living current. When she swung into the saddle, Grey Wind bounded beside her horse, and for an instant Robb wondered whether the direwolf would ever return if he let it go. Yet, he only nodded. Arya signaled her men, and they vanished down the causeway road like phantoms toward the frost. While northern blood set its course, southern waters darkened. On a crisp dawn outside Duskendale, Asha Greyjoy stood atop the prow of the Black Mara, hair whipping free of its leather cord. Ahead, the foam carried a taste of river silt, though they were still 6 miles off the Blackwater mouth. It was the stench of unnatural churn, burned pitch and sour copper. Squinting, she spotted wrecked timbers bumping the waves. Oak beams charred black, a mast cracked off, sailcloth shredded by more than storm. "Signal the fleet to oar guard," she ordered. "1 bell. Be wary." The master of the deck repeated her call up the chain. Behind the Mara, 12 stout longships fanned like a crescent, each bearing the Kraken pennant stitched with newly minted white deerwolves. The deal hammered between Robb and Asha was simple. The Ironborn would guard the gullet and the Blackwater's entry against Euron's encroachments. And in return, the North would allow House Greyjoy a measure of legal trade at Salt Cliff and Pike, once peace settled. Asha found herself half ridiculing her own bargain. What was a piece of parchment and a promise when Ironmen had thrived on raiding for centuries? Yet she knew the new world needed new customs, and she'd be damned if her uncle's madness snatched the chance away. A lookout high in the crow's cage cried, "Sails, dead ahead." Asha raised her spyglass. 3 hulls, black and lean, rode out of a gray morning mist. They moved under ragged triangular sails. Not Ironborn cut, not Westerosi square. The foremost ship boasted a carved prow shaped like a gore-soaked mask, a screaming face wrought from drift-silvered wood, eyes gouged. The silence. Euron Crow's Eyes flagship. Drums. Asha snapped. Battle lines. Oars only, no sail. He'll try to flank windward. Men sprang to posts, shields hammered against hull ribs. As the drum thunder rolled across water, Asha felt the old thrill. A kraken song in her blood reminding her she was daughter of Balon, product of sea spray and blade. But today's enemy was her own kin. If kin could be counted in that patchwork of vile intent Euron carried beneath his blue-black kiss. The Silence's crew sang a mournful dirge in some tongue Asha did not know. It carried over the waves like a promise of howls. Then a crosswind grabbed their sails. They cut them, turning to row. Euron's dark figure stood on the foredeck, one hand raised, eye patch glinting. Behind him, some thrall hefted a long-necked jar with a silver stopper. Asha's breath caught. Wildfire? No. Worse. The jar shimmered with an oily iridescence she'd seen only once, in rumors from Korth. Shade of the evening. Euron uncorked, drank deep, lips staining indigo. Then he flung the remainder into the waves. Where the liquid hit, the sea boiled purple, and up from below emerged shapes, half-naked, pallid, wearing drowned fetishes around throats. Silent sisters lost to the deep? No, these things scaled the Silence's hull, glassy-eyed, brandishing hooks and rusted cutlasses. Mad bastards roped from lower decks to join them. How many had he stored down there? Thralls baptized in black water and hallucinatory brew. Loose! Asha shouted, and a volley of quarrels streaked, felling the first of the wet demons before they reached the gunwale. But the Silence's sides sprouted grapnels. Another enemy ship closed from starboard, and the Black Mara shuddered under impact. Boarding planks slammed. Ironborn met Ironborn, axes screeching, shields splintering Carntia. Amid the melee, Asha saw her uncle striding across a plank, twin blades dripping purple gore. He met her eyes and grinned, a crescent of cracked white. "Niece," he called above the din. "You've traded raids for parchment. Let's write your legacy in steel instead." She answered with an axe swing. Sparks showered as edge met edge. On her second blow he parried again, laughing. But Euron's laugh faltered when a shadow blocked the sun. A vast, beating shadow. Drogon Dot. The dragon plunged, jaws open, sleek black flanks rippling. Flame roared. Not the orange of common fire, but molten gold and white, hotter than forged bellows. It poured across the Silence's deck, engulfing thralls, curling around mast. Euron twisted away, cloak ablaze. By the time he leapt overboard, his prized flagship was a conflagration. On the cliff passage to Duskendale, Daenerys sat astride a white palfrey nicknamed Ghost Flame, watching the dragon flame bloom on horizon. She had come on Stannis' request to inspect new beacon towers along coast. Word of Euron's fleet had set her conscience prickling. Now she saw smoke columns rising like black pillars of some vanquished kingdom. Beside her, Melisandre murmured relief that the Kraken ships were outmatched. Ser Barristan, however, narrowed his gaze. If a crow's eye fled that furnace, he warned, then like a crow he'll circle carrion yet. Daenerys touched the carved dragonbone handle of her whip. Let him circle. The realm has talons enough now. While fires cooled on water, smoldering matters simmered in stone. At Harrenhal, Stannis held audience for Lord Wyman Manderley, newly arrived from White Harbor bearing dire tidings of Skago's raids. Carried in sedan by 4 burly sons, Manderley still looked wan, weight fallen, but will unbowed. "They come in stolen hulls, your grace," he said, voice wheeze-hoarse. 10 or 20 at a tide. Not ironborn. They sail under rags of human skin stitched crude to a mast. Worse than ironborn. They take no plunder, only flesh. Children vanish. Men found flayed and bound in krakens carved upon their chests. His jowls trembled. My lords burrow shelters, yet walls cannot bar seaborne hell. Davos frowned. Could be Crow's Eye stragglers, or Bolton remnants. Bolton's banners hide in burrow too, but these devils outrun even their taste. Manderley's eyes glistened. I beg the throne, dispatch galleys up the White Knife and hold her mouth. If I charter Storm's End hulls, I'll do it. But men trust crown gold more than mine, while famine whispers. Then no crossings. Stannis looked over maps. He pointed at shallow river bends near the flint cliffs. We can divert 4 of the Dragonstone Dramans refitting its salt pans. Lord Willis-Fell commands them. He'll sail within a fortnight. I thank you, sire. Manderley's head bowed, his double chin bobbing. Davos added, we'd do better still with a few of Lady Asha's Kraken ships since they know those channels. Stannis allowed. We'll persuade her after she's cleaned Euron's blood from deck. As the council adjourned, Melisandre lingered. Her ruby glowed a dim pulse. The flames showed me a face, she confided when Davos had gone. A boy with direwolf eyes and dragon scars, standing upon a frozen hill, sword in one hand, blue fire in the other. She looked into Stannis' stern visage. This boy will break the final winter. Stannis rubbed his brow. Cryptic riddles again. Does the boy live? I know not, she said, uncharacteristically uncertain. But I felt snow in my bones, and a name in ash. Jon. Then pray your God leads my men to him, Stannis said. With that he dismissed her, and wondered why the warming of spring felt so evanescent against such visions. Robb parted company with the escort west of Maidenpool, and rode north at a pace that left most of his retinue grumbling. The new king of the north had little taste for ceremony, when his siblings were scattered in frost and salt rain. He reached Winterfell by dusk of the 3rd day, greeted by Maester Durnick and Lady Mage Mormont, organizing displaced smallfolk into craft guilds. The sight of scaffolds rising around Winterfell's ash-scarred towers lifted his spirit. They had hung the Stark banner high again, and though snow still lay in pockets like ghosts, the pools steamed with life. Sansa met him in the Godswood. She knelt by the heart tree, hands folded, lips moving in silent prayer. When Robb's boots crushed dry leaves, she rose and flung her arms around his neck. It had been months since that courtyard rescue from Cersei's dagger, but every day since had built a fortress of resolve in her eyes. She listened as he told her of Arya's mission, of the Walker splinters, of the newly crowned King Stannis trusting Daenerys as hand. With each compromise, Sansa said, you lay a stone in a bridge to a place we can't quite see yet. It's a bridge we must cross, he answered. He brushed a lock of auburn hair behind her ear. But Arya rushes ahead. I want archers, hardened scouts, wargs if we can wrest them from beyond the last river. She touched the weirwood trunk. Father would send help before you ask. I'll ride to Torrhen Square to raise every man left standing. We can muster 500 sure-footed lads in 2 days. Natima. He smiled. You're a true Stark, sister. That I am, she said, turning to snap instructions at a waiting page. She would leave at first light. That night Robb sat in the broken solar, parchment spilling across the desk of oak. He penned letters to every bannerman. The Barrowlands, Carhold, the Rills. He wrote to Gilead Oldtown, asking after Samwell, and any further word from the Maesters about Dragonglass caches near Dragonstone. And he wrote a final letter to Arya, though she would never see it, words of heavy expectation and trust, a brother's pledge to follow wherever she led. By dawn, Winterfell's courtyard bristled with movement. Blacksmiths hammering new arrowheads of obsidian, stable hands birthing more pack ponies for northern marches, mothers sewing thicker cloaks. The realm could almost be mistaken for one at peace, but for the hush that fell every time someone stared north. Robb left Winterfell with 200 seasoned riders, Karstark veterans, Mormont spears, a dozen Umbers who had refused to bend to Bolton's threats, and an ox cart laden with obsidian arrows fletched bright blue for night tracking. Grey wind ran ahead, his breath streaming like wisps of cloud. They aimed for the Bridge of Skulls. 3 days if weather held. At first, weather did. Then the sky bruised. Snow squalls reared, blotting out sun. On the second evening, they reached the ruins of Queen's Crown and found the inn's stone tower, plastered with a white score, recent. The corpses were 3 wildlings, each with chest cavity hollowed, heart removed. Robb felt horror twist his gut. The wildlings bore no marks, but had faces locked in surprise. Trackers found prints of bare human feet, small, leading north. A child, or the Shardling. They buried the dead under snow and pressed on. Arya and her scout band reached the Bridge of Skulls ahead of time, only to find it shattered. Half the span lay in the gorge below, battered by spring flood roaring over ice shards. They could not cross. She sent men upriver searching for a ford. Grey wind had not arrived yet. She worried what that meant about Robb's progress. That night they saw lights on distant ridge. Not campfires, but flickers of cold bluish flame. "They move," said Joss, her second. "Looks like a line of 50, maybe more, circling north." Arya studied the light. Her heart hammered, but her eyes were calm. "They follow something," she said. She closed her eyes, reaching in the instruction the ghostly faceless man Jaqen had once hinted. Become no one. Feel the world pass through unafraid. When she opened them, the cold line seemed clearer. It was a hunting party, but not after them. It tracked life. She felt the pull like thread. Jon. She made a decision. Set half her men to hold position, maintain signal fires for Robb, then chose a dozen of the fleetest to follow her through goat trails down the gorge side, across frigid rapids, and into the Frostfangs by way of shale switchbacks. "If we survive," Joss warned, "we'll freeze before we fight." "We won't freeze," Arya answered, patting Needle. And they didn't. They slipped between pines draped in hoarfrost, along crests where wind howled so hard it scoured the snow before it settled. Every hour Arya glimpsed the blue flame lights ahead like Ignis Fatuus. Every hour closer. On the second night, they found Jon. He stood on a ridge under a broken moon, hair rimed in ice, but eyes, yes, alive. He was not alone. 24 Night's Watch brothers ringed the hilltop, barricaded behind a half-circle of felled spruce. Inside the ring, about 30 wildlings. Women, children, old men. Huddled. Ghost-paced perimeter. Every hackle, a silver dagger in moonlight. Opposite them, whites howled over the ridge in waves, repelled by circle of dead firewood laced with dragon glass shards, stuck upright like jagged teeth. Each time a white tried breach, a stone arrow wrecked it. Its brethren reassembled pieces behind. Arya's heart leaped in her throat. She almost called out, but held still. Her father's caution whispering, "Measure, look." Jon loosed a flaming arrow that gutted an approaching white. The creature fell, light leaking from eye sockets. There it was. The Shardling. She saw it then. A figure of ice crystal, no taller than a 10-year child, stepping over fallen whites with unnatural grace. Its eyes burned cobalt. In its fists, glinted razor-thin shards of something darker than onyx. It pointed, silent command, and whites rushed again. Arya signaled silence. Her scouts readied obsidian blades. She crawled closer through snow. Jon fired again, sparked something on ground, creating a flare so bright the whites recoiled. He shouted orders, "Watch the right, pack splits." She heard his voice. Yes, her brother's voice, and tears stung. The Shardling advanced, carving through burning branches with those black shards that hissed, extinguishing flame upon contact. Arya recognized magic at work. The shards stifled heat itself. Ghost lunged at the Shardling but struck air. The figure sidestepped, slicing the direwolf's flank. Ghost yelped. White coat streaked red. Jon charged with Longclaw. The blade met one shard. Steel screeched, sparks flashed, ice steamed. Jon staggered, but Longclaw held. Arya broke her cover. She fired a dragonglass arrow. It struck the shardling's left shoulder, exploded into powder. The creature hissed, voice like crackling lake ice. It turned toward her, eyes locking. "Arya!" Jon cried, recognition cutting through battle. She loosed a second arrow, grazing its leg. Then she surged forward, needle in hand. Her scouts erupted behind rushing whites. Battle turned chaotic. Snow filled air, but within swirl two siblings converged on a creature older than memory. Jon swung high. Arya ducked low, stabbed at knee. The shardling twisted, and a shard blade stabbed toward her neck. Jon blocked, but the shard nicked his vambrace, slicing leather like silk. Cold burned him sickening. Yet he pressed. Their dance wove around flames. Ghost limped, but lunged again, teeth closing on the creature's ankle. This time his jaw held, he yanked. Arya saw her chance, drove needle through the gap in its crystalline chest, where her first arrow had cracked ice. Needle splintered, but lodged deep. Jon thrust Longclaw into same wound. Blue light leaked, then flared. The shardling stilled, a hum growing until its body shattered like glass in forged quench, shards vaporizing in the frigid air. The remaining whites collapsed, limbs inert. Silence fell across the ridge but for ghostly wind. Arya exhaled, chest burning, turned to Jon. He smiled, weary beyond words, eyes shining with tears and unshed horror. She laughed, a wild broken sound, and flung arms around him, mindful of frost and bruise. Ghost knows them both. Needle lay broken. She wept harder. "You found your own way to northern legend," Jon said, voice rough. "I feared you'd be hostage to fancy feasts for life." "I'm still hungry," she said. "Just not for feasts." They laughed like children stolen from time. At dawn, Robb's column arrived at Bridge of Skulls to find Arya's watchers still holding fires. They relayed news. She'd gone after the shardling. Terror stabbed Robb's heart, but warm relief followed when torches emerged from pass. Arya led the survivors. Jon carried a wildling girl in his arms, wound bound. Behind them, Ghost limped beside Grey Wind. Jon raised a hand. Robb spurred forward, struck into embrace, not caring for rank or wound. The brothers held each other, tears merging with snowfall. Around them men cheered. Mormont women raised spears, Karstarks howled. Later, they burned the shardling shards, those few needle-thin remnants Ghost had carried, on pyre laced with dragon's glass dust. Green flame licked up, smell like pine and something older, and the wind shifted warmer, as though that sliver of ancient winter had stolen warmth until now. Jon reported what he'd seen beyond Eastwatch, a mountain of ice rising far on the frozen sea, as if remnants of the Night King's stronghold still pulsed. And deeper whispers, more children of ice, fragments of First Walker wrought from sacrifice of Craster's sons, still forming. Robb listened, jaw set. "We ended one legion," he said. "But the war for Dawn is not won." Jon nodded, eyes older than the frost. Harrenhal prepared for second harvest of new spring when ravens arrived bearing twin news. Euron's civil fleet scattered, his flagship sunk, his own fate uncertain, and Asha's krakens blockaded the stepstones to prevent Korth's slave ships carrying sorcerous weapons from slipping into Westeros. Stannis received the dispatch stone-faced but nodded approval. "Write to Lady Greyjoy. The Crown grants salt charter for trade along the Trident for 5 seasons," he said, surprising those who remembered his disdain. Daenerys added a codicil. Greyjoy ships would also ferry freed slaves from Essos ports to any Westerosi holdfast, offering them asylum. It was the first time such movement had been sanctioned. Some lords blustered, but none challenged her dragon gaze. The council's next priority became the Dreadfort. Reports claimed a bastard cousin of the Boltons, one Sir Huther of the Weeping, had claimed lordship and flayed any maester who protested. Robb proposed diplomacy through strength. Ride north with Jon, Arya, Mage Mormont, 1,000 archers, and demand surrender. If Sir Hother bent the knee, he would stand trial under Stannis' new northern tribunal. If not, Winterfell would remove the flayed man from northern banners forever. Sansa, still in Torrhen's Square, sent word by Raven pledging a battalion from Rills and Hornwood to join. Jon, named Watchlord of New Gift by Robb, shook his head at politics but accepted his role. Rebuild the Night's Watch from both wildlings and southern volunteers. They would no longer be just watchers but wardens, guardians who also grew grain and nurtured villages in the gift. Daenerys promised him seeds from the Summer Isles, crops thriving in cold with dragon ash fertilizer. Stannis granted land charters once hoarded by northern titles. Some lords squawked but bowed to precedent. Thus the old order bent anew. South, Prince Trystane Martell arrived at Old Town with his caravan. In the citadel he met Archmaester Illyrio of Metals and Archmaester Marwyn of Higher Mysteries, both studying a curious black steel ring, etched with runes looted long ago from Valyria. They believed it related to the shards the Shardling had wielded. Trystane insisted on shipping the ring to Harrenhal for Council's secret review. But first word leaked. Slavers in Slaver's Bay sought the same alloy, whispering of forging swords to steal dragonfire. When Daenerys learned, she dispatched Rhaegal and a flight of sail ships to Slaver's Bay to scorch such ambitions. Ser Barristan, aging yet unbowed, asked to accompany the mission. A final crusade to finish the chains he helped break in Meereen. She granted him honor guard, tears for those battles to come. Stannis spent evenings in the charred Godswood, Lightbringer across his knees, seeking counsel not from gods, but from memory. One night Davos joined him with a skin of wine. "Never thought I'd see you share rulership," Davos said. Stannis stared at the pale moon. "I once believed duty meant refusal to yield. Now I see duty is service to realm, not pride." He breathed, the air smelling of pine smoke and faint lilac. "I'll still die resolute, but maybe not alone." By midsummer rivers swelled with meltwater. Grain sprouted where battlefields had drunk blood. Children in the streets of King's Landing laughed at the giant goat puppet Tyrion funded. A weekly play lampooning the old king's follies. High Septon officiated marriages of commoners and lords alike beneath the new seven-spire hall. While at its center the weirwood sapling grew taller than a man, crimson leaves whispering in breeze. They named it the Peace Bloom. Letters from Essos hailed a broad embargo on slave galleys after Daenerys dragons incinerated 4 noble manses in Meereen's slaver quarter. A demonstration, not a massacre, but enough to make bricks tremble. The tattered prince of the wind-blown Sellswords swore allegiance and offered ships to ferry freedmen west. Tyrion wondered if Sellswords could be trusted. Olenna suggested trust was a dish best served with coin and spectacle. Near White Harbor, Mannerly's sons launched the first lighthouse beacon tower lined with polished obsidian caught in iron frames. When lit, its flame refracted across the sea, a warning to any walker fragments drifting like icy seeds. They called it Wolflight. More towers were planned at Eastwatch Ruins, Pike, and Cape Wrath. It was said the beams could be seen from Dragonback at 50 leagues. At the Dreadfort, Robb and Jon marched through shattered gates after a 2-day siege in driving sleet. Ser Hother met them in the yard, skin cloak stiff with ice, defiance puckering his lips. Needle, reforged with dragon steel courtesy of Maester Lomas's new forge in Winterfell, found its way between Hother's ribs courtesy of Arya, who offered him the mercy he never offered his victims. They raised the direwolf on the ramparts. In Winterfell weeks later, all of Bolton's flayed banners fed a bonfire so hot it cracked the castle's new glass windows. On the eve of autumn's first moon, the Regency reconvened in King's Landing, no longer in broken halls, but in a new chamber beneath the Peace Bloom's crimson crown. Robb arrived with Sansa and Bran, brought south for the first time since childhood, his legs supported by Maester Dernick's wooden braces and Drogon's sinew cords. He would never walk unassisted, but he stood to greet the lords, and when he bowed everybody felt the gift of a boy spared. Arya lingered in the north. She claimed the Howling Hills needed a sword and a ghost more than the capital needed her presence. Daenerys returned from Slaver's Bay with Rhaegal's wing scored but victorious. Word of the Queen of Peacefire preceded her, along with morale-shattering tales for any slaver still clinging to whip. Asha Greyjoy sailed up the Blackwater with 2 holds of olive oil and Dornish wine, spoils of seized Stepstone smuggler hulks. Euron's body had not surfaced, but rumor placed him wandering the Basilisk Isles, worshipped by cannibal pygmies. Tyrion quipped that cannibals would find little meat on those bones. Stannis presided wearing a crown of black iron rimmed with stag antlers, not gilt but etched in runes of the First Men and Valyria both, signifying union of old worlds. He called the realm's first open moot, a gathering of smallfolk representatives chosen by each lord to voice grievances directly. Some protested, some lords balked, but the moot met in a field outside Maidenpool. They spoke of taxes and thugs, of broken mills and hope. Stannis listened. People said he even smiled at a cobbler's clever rhyme about men boots men kingdom. Meanwhile, Daenerys formed a new order, the Companions of Dawn, mixed knights, free folk, and unsullied, who vowed to ride north at any whisper of Walker return. They bore cloaks of pure gray fastened with a shard of hardened dragonglass. Jon Snow served as their figurehead, though his focus remained the gift. Bran gifted them ravens trained by the children of the hill clans to carry message beads. Worked bone inscribed, light, snow, flame, danger, a code quick to read. Courts reopened in cities where no king's justice had sat for years. Cersei Lannister's trial in Old Town concluded with a sentence of exile to the Citadel's Silent Sisters Infirmary, where she would live out her days tending plague victims. Mercy or cruelty depending who judged. Joffrey, denied the name Baratheon, spent his days gardening under watch at the old Tommen's garden in the Reach. Olenna claimed his roses bloomed redder than any, watered by humility. Some whispered he plotted, others shrugged. For Tyrion, redemption came in tasks. He drafted the charter granting Winterfell rights to a council of freeholders, farmers and craftsmen with a vote on taxes. He secured Braavosi investment in a new iron foundry at Deepwood. He wrote letters that coaxed small Essos city-states to abandon indenture for paid labor. Words are arrows, he mused to Podrick one evening on the ramparts. But they kill slower. Let's hope slow death for tyranny is death enough. One twilight in late autumn, Robb and Daenerys met again beneath the peace bloom. Children were playing tag around its roots, laughing. Bran sat near the trunk, sketching shapes of ravens on parchment, while Sansa exchanged recipes with Missandei. Lemon cakes spiced with dragon pepper. Ghost and Grey Wind chased each other among benches, tails sending petals and swirls. Robb turned to Daenerys. We began as strangers with swords at throats. And now? She asked. Now we have bridges yet to cross, he said. But winter taught me to keep moving. Daenerys touched her whip's hilt. And dragons taught me skies are larger than crowns. She looked up. Rhaegal glided overhead like living emerald. We can build a world shaped by mercy busy with steel. The Song of Ice and Fire still plays, but maybe it's no longer a dirge. Robb smiled. Maybe it's a cradle hymn. He offered his arm as bells rang to summon them back inside. He still carried scars. She still bore dragons. The realm still bristled with threats of kraken tides and nascent shards of winter. Yet children's laughter rooted the tree, grain waved where siege towers once stood, and stories began to replace rumors. With each step, they laid another stone of their bridge, walking forward beneath leaves crimson as dawn and white as hope into a kingdom, learning to breathe again.